The events described in this story occurred at different times for different members of the same family. I met this family and convinced them to tell me their story. This strange incident happened with 4 members of this family. Hello, my name is Harrison, and I am conducting research on paranormal incidents. I want to become a paranormal investigator in the future, and I am currently preparing for that. I take notes on paranormal activity that occurs around me, and I discuss strange occurrences with people in the hopes that this will help me become a paranormal investigator in the future. So I met a family today who informed me about a paranormal event that happened to them recently, and I decided to start a record of these occurrences. Let's figure out what happened to them. Mr. Williams lives in this house with his wife and 2 children. Their older son, Colton, is 15 years old, and their younger son, Nicole, is 12 years old. Nicole, the house's youngest and brightest member, describes what happened to him as follows. We bought this house 6 years ago, and after a few months, strange things began to happen in this house. As a result, household items began to deteriorate. First, the TV was damaged, then the fridge, and finally, the air conditioner. As a result, other things in the house started to fail. Everyone was surprised to know why all of these things were happening in the house. Then I went to bed in my room one night. I dozed for a while. Right at that moment, I became aware of the sound of someone strolling in the upstairs room using loud, heavy footsteps. Thack, 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 thack. I was thinking that since no one goes upstairs, where is this sound coming from? I told everyone in my house about it the next morning, but no one paid attention. Hearing this, I began to believe that something similar had occurred, and I went back to sleep in my room that night. Around 2:30 a.m., I felt as if someone had climbed onto my bed. I opened my eyes and looked around, but no one was there. I then realized it was a dream and fell back asleep. A few days later, some of my relatives visited us for the holidays. They also had 2 children the same age as me. After dinner, all of the kids came to my room and began scaring each other by telling ghost witch stories. One of them, Archie, declared that he was not afraid of ghosts and began boasting in this manner. Dean, Archie's elder brother, stated that if he was not afraid, he would go alone into another room where a smaller light bulb was torching. Archie said, "What's the big deal about this? I'm going now." Archie went to that room and then ran out of it very quickly. We saw him walk out. We burst out laughing and began making fun of him. Then, Archie began to cry and became completely drenched in sweat. I was so puzzled by everything that I asked him what had happened. He trembled and said, "I saw a man there who was wrapped in a black blanket, and he was leaning as he walked." Telling this, he started crying louder, but I managed to calm him down and get everyone back into the game. After a while of playing, everyone fell asleep. But everything that happened to me and Archie was going through my head. I went to the balcony to think about all of this. When I looked down, I saw the same man that Archie had told me about. He was slowly approaching our car, and then, as he got close, he suddenly disappeared. After this incident, I became scared and began sleeping with my father. For a few days, everything was fine. I didn't hear any footsteps and never saw that man again. I assumed everything was fine, but I was mistaken, because such incidents began to occur with my elder brother, Jackson. This was Nicole's story. Let us now hear what happened to Jackson. He described the incidents that occurred to him in this manner. My family members slept inside the room, while I slept on the couch outside in the hall. I couldn't sleep despite my best efforts, so I started walking around the house like this. While walking, my gaze was drawn to the main gate, and I had the impression that someone was standing outside it. I went to the gate to look, but no one was there, so I went back to sleep. The next day, around 3 p.m., I went to the second floor for some work. As I was walking, I felt like someone was following me. I looked back 2 or 3 times, but no one was there. I heard something falling from behind as I was going downstairs. I looked back and saw a black shadow on the wall in front of me, and she vanished as soon as I saw it. I jumped in terror and sprinted downstairs. I spent the following night sleeping in the hallway. In the middle of the night, my eyes opened unexpectedly. And seeing what was in front of me, my condition had reached a point where nothing was coming out of my mouth. I tried to scream, but couldn't even if I wanted to. Her face was so horrifying that anyone with a weak heart would die just by looking at her. Her tattered black clothes and hair were slowly flying through the air, and she was about a foot above the ground and staring at me. I began to read my prayers in my head, but my prayers had no effect on it. She stared at me for 2 or 3 minutes, then went up the stairs, and I had no idea when I fainted. The next morning, I woke up and immediately rushed to tell my mother everything that had happened. Nicole also arrived and stated that there is something wrong in this house, and I also saw a man dressed in black and heard someone walking in the night. After hearing this, Mother was convinced that if both of them are saying this, then something is seriously wrong. The next day, the mother called a priest from the church and told him everything and asked him to purify the house, which the priest did by going around the entire house and purifying it with holy water. While I was sleeping that night, someone picked me up from the sofa and slammed me on the ground so hard that I broke my straight arm. To the sound of my screams, my entire family woke and began asking what had happened. Someone slammed me down hard and broke my arm. I cried. All of the family members were terrified after witnessing this. And the next day, we went to our uncle's house and told them everything. He said, "You stay here for a few days, and we'll figure out what to do after that." The first 2 days went well, but on the third day, something happened that I can't believe could ever happen. This was Jackson's claim. Let's hear what happened on the third day, which was hard to believe and told by Nicole and Jackson's mother in this manner. There was no one at the house on the third day, as I sat on the sofa watching TV. I felt as if someone was sitting by my side while watching TV, and when I looked to the side, my senses were blown away. A man and a woman dressed in black sat beside me. I couldn't move or speak, and both of them were frighteningly smiling at me. Then they both got up and went to the kitchen, not knowing where they were going from there. When my husband came back home from work that night, I told him everything, and we all became upset once more that such incidents occur here as well. Everyone else had slept through the night, but I couldn't. I began to worry more about the children than myself, that they should never see anything like this again. When I woke up at 1:00 a.m., I smelled gas and suspected that it was leaking. I went to the kitchen to investigate. Everything looked normal when I arrived, but as I turned to head back to my room, I heard a voice call out to me from behind. I turned the phone back and saw that no one was there. I dashed to my room because I hadn't gotten any sleep that night. The next morning, I told my husband, "We should do something. What is going on?" He stated that I would be going home today with a priest. Mr. Williams invited a learned priest to his home, and he related everything that happened up to this point. After arriving at his residence, the priest stepped inside one of the rooms to check on something. After looking around the entire house, the priest concluded that there are 2 different kinds of demonic powers living here. Husband and wife, and the soul of a small child wonders who died in this place many years ago. But my concern is that 2 demonic powers, only they can harm your family. There is nothing to be afraid of others. When I heard this, I was terrified and asked the priest to help me solve the problem. The priest stated, "I will come after I finish my special worship. Until then, I will give an amulet to your family. This amulet will guard your loved ones from harm. Those souls will be visible to you, but they will not be able to harm you." The priest told me that in order to combat these evil spirits, I will need to make some necessary preparations. I returned to my family, gave the amulets to everyone, and told my wife everything the priest said. After a few days, the priest had finished his special worship, and I took him back to my place once more. The priest retrieved a small pitcher. He started a fire and put something strange in it, and a strange smell spread throughout the house. He then sat down on the ground and took 5 lemons. After reciting the mantra, he continued to place each lemon in a bag in turn. Every time the priest uttered the mantra, those of us there began to feel a peculiar restlessness, and our bodies felt heavy. The priest declared that there is no longer any cause for concern when he had finished placing all of the lemons in the bag. "Put these lemons in a location where they can't be reached by anyone." Then he left. Then I threw those lemons in a nearby canal and went home. As the filth subsided, the atmosphere of the house became lighter, and it appeared as if there was so much peace in the house. That evening, I called my family. Nothing like this has ever happened in the house since that day. Here is the strange thing that happened to Mr. Williams' family. I had to document a number of similar incidents that occurred with various people in various locations. Stay tuned with me. My name is Harrison, and you probably already know about me. I'm a paranormal investigator that looks into all these strange and eerie occurrences that are happening all around us. I recently spoke with Mr. William and his family, and they told me that ever since they moved into their new home, they had been plagued with demonic spirits in their home. However, since they had it treated by the church, they no longer feel anything like this in their home, and they are now living happily in their new home. After questioning him, I was driving to my house through a road when a man suddenly appeared in front of my car. My car brakes were applied in time, so I'm not sure what would have happened. Then I got out of my car and went to that man, but it appeared as if he had just had a large shock, after which that man is not in his senses, and as a result, he did not even realize he was in the midst of a moving road. "Sir, are you okay?" I inquired of the man. It appears as though my question had no impact on him, and that even my voice was inaudible to him. "Sir, can you hear my voice?" I asked the man as I once more bowed to him. "Are you all right?" It's as if my voice has reached that man's ear, and upon hearing it, he turns to face me. Looking into his eyes, it appeared as if he had sobbed a lot, causing the color of his eyes to lighten. Seeing this, I was convinced that something terrible had occurred to that man, causing him to be in such a state. The man began crying loudly as soon as he saw me and sat on the road as if the power had gone out of his feet. Seeing this, I wanted to help that man, but we were in the middle of the road, so first and foremost, I had to keep him and myself safe. So I somehow loaded him into my car and began driving on one side of the road. After safely parking the car on one side of the road, I asked the man, "Sir, are you all right now? What happened to you? And if you don't mind sharing your point with me, could I be of some assistance to you?" The man was still crying as if he wanted to take out his sadness by crying, but he couldn't. After a moment of crying, the man calmed himself and began speaking in a panic. "I have to hurry to my house. I have to save my daughter. Lest she kill my daughter as well." The man got out of my car and began sprinting. When I saw this, I jumped out of the car and raced after the man to stop him since I knew he was still in shock and had no idea what he was doing. "Wait, you're putting yourself in danger by doing this," I said as I instantly halted the man. "I don't know what occurred to you to cause you to be in such a state, but how will you save your daughter if you're acting in such a panic?" After listening to me, the man came to his senses and began telling me what had happened to him. Seeing that man in this state, I told him once more, "What happened to you that you are so concerned about, and what is the risk to your daughter? And she will kill your daughter? Why did you say that? Has she previously murdered someone in your home? Who is this lady? Is it possible to enlist the assistance of the police in this case, or is it something else?" Hearing my questions, the man tells me his story. Benjamin is a cab driver by trade and lives with his family outside of town. Amelia is his wife's name. Ava is their oldest daughter, and Lucas is their son. Amelia was fine the rest of the day when he went to work and the kids went to school. However, when her kids got home from school in the afternoon, they both noticed that their mom is looking a little more beautiful today. When I got home from work in the evening, I also noticed that my wife had changed. Wow! Everything in my house began to change the next day. Happiness began to pour in. A large sum of money began to arrive. We suddenly began finding buried treasure in the earth near our house. And my wife Amelia first revealed these riches to me while digging to cultivate vegetables in a nearby field. And then we discovered the buried treasure for the first time. After that, we began moving the valuables buried in the field from one location to another. I couldn't believe how much money was flooding in. After all of this, I quit my cab driver job and began enjoying all of these things. There was no need for me to work today because I had so much money and had enrolled my children in a large school to study, Everything was fine until one night when unusual and strange things began to happen in our lives. When we woke in the morning, we discovered that my younger son Lucas was missing from the house. Despite extensive searches, we were unable to find him. How could my kid go out alone at night when he was so young and always picked us up when he had to go somewhere at night? No one could come from the outside and sneak into our house and take him away. If he left, then where did he leave? We informed the police, and the police immediately began their investigation. In the midst of all this, though, I noticed that despite my concern for my son, my wife Amelia acted as if nothing significant had occurred. A priest came to our house one day to have his water bottle refilled. That pastor's car had broken down on the road near our house and he was out of water. So when he saw our house, he came to drink water from us. He arrived and rang the doorbell. Hearing the doorbell, I opened the gate and the pastor requested me to give him water, explaining that their car had broken down on a neighboring road and they were waiting for a mechanic while their drinking water was out. Hearing this, I called my wife Amelia and offered him a glass of water. Amelia brought water in a glass, and when she spotted the priest, she stopped and glanced at him. When the priest gazed at Amelia, he felt the same way. Amelia was staring at the preacher as she stood there awkwardly and without moving. A peculiar pity appeared on her face, as though, seeing the pastor, Amelia remained motionless, staring at the priest, as if she is warning him to leave. But when I requested my wife to come forward and give him the water, the priest remarked, "If you don't mind, may I come in and get water from them myself?" When I heard this, I told him that it was fine and he could come and take it himself. And as the pastor stepped inside, Amelia yelled out loudly, hurled the same glass of water, and dashed inside. I approached Amelia and inquired as to what had occurred. "Why are you feeling like this?" However, Amelia did not respond. When I saw this, I stood up and began giving the priest water. The priest thanked me for refilling his water bottle. He asked, "What's the problem, son? You seem quite upset to me." Hearing this, I told him, "Father, my younger son Lucas is nowhere to be found. I'm not sure where he is. I've searched, but he's nowhere to be found. Even the police haven't been able to find him yet." When the priest heard this, he looked at my house and stepped outside to tell me, "If you come to the church on the surrounding road tomorrow, I will meet you there." In addition, I was reminded that your wife should not know anything about this. I questioned the priest. "Father, why shouldn't my wife know this? Likewise, are you concerned about Lucas?" Then the priest said to me, "Just do what I've said. Come to me tomorrow and I'll tell you everything." And the father went. When I entered the house, Amelia demanded to know what that beggar was saying. I stated nothing, and why was she conversing with me in this manner? In response, Amelia stated that he must be driven away from this residence if he returns. I don't like such people at all. Hearing this made me feel quite odd, but I paid it little mind. The following day, I awoke early and got dressed quickly. Amelia asked me, "Where are you going to get ready so quickly?" On this, I stated that I must meet a new client today to begin my new business. Thus, I must leave early. I left the house and proceeded directly to the church where the pastor had desired to meet me. After arriving at the location, I asked the pastors why they had summoned me there. He informed me that a wicked witch resides in your home. In response, I told him, "No, Father, everything is going well at my place and money has begun to flow in. Once my son gets here, everything will be fine again." On this point, the priest asked me, "When you arrived home from work a few days ago and entered your home, did you notice anything unusual about your wife? Since that day your fortune has begun to improve. Have you ever pondered the cause of this unexpected improvement?" I responded, "No, Father, I have not even considered this. What is wrong with my residence? Father, kindly inform me." Regarding this, the priest informed me that the woman you consider to be your wife is actually a witch. Your wife died the same day you returned home from work at night, just as you began to find her attractive. When I heard this, I became enraged and told the priest that, "If you want money, ask for it, but do not add to my trouble by doing such things." Therefore, the pastor responded, All right, follow your wife tonight and notice what she does. However, remember that if her eyes fall on you, you will perform the same condition as your son. In response, I asked him, like my son? What happened to my son? On this, the priest instructed me to leave, wait for the night, and then come back to see him the next day. Just then, I receive a call from the police who inform me that they have discovered a child's necklace body in the pond behind my house. Hearing this, I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I hurried from there to my house, and when I got there, I couldn't believe what I saw. My wife was crying near the pond, and I was watching her cry from a distance, as if my legs lacked the strength to move ahead. But I moved my legs and began heading in the direction where the corpse was laying. What I witnessed after arriving there, it was as if it sapped the strength from my feet. A body was pulled from the pond, and that body was dressed in my son Lucas's clothes. And of course, that body was my son Lucas. Seeing his physique, it appeared as though someone had extracted all of his blood and drank it. Normally, being in water causes the body to swell, but his body was absolutely dry. At that point, I began to recall what the preacher had said to me in church a while before, and I was convinced of it, even though I didn't want to be. And I began to doubt my wife for the first time. My name is Harrison, and while I was driving away from William's house, a man named Benjamin suddenly pulled out in front of my car on the highway. I slammed on the brakes as soon as I noticed it. Otherwise, I'm not sure what would have occurred. He appeared to be experiencing a tremendous deal of shock when I first saw him, and when I asked him what was wrong, he informed me what happened to his wife and son. As you already know after watching the second episode, following the priest's revelation that his wife was a witch and had murdered his son, until he pulled his younger son's headless body from the water behind his house, he had no idea. Then, for the first time, he began to take the priest's words seriously, and unwillingly, he began to distrust his wife. On that day, I was sitting in my house sorrowful after performing my son's final rites. My wife was also seated next to me. At that time, I was remembering the words of the pastor while staring at my wife. My wife was watching my eldest daughter's room. When I saw this, my mind was filled with fear because questions had settled in my mind and I was simply sitting there watching one of my children die. I didn't want anything to happen to my other child. I told my wife that we couldn't keep our daughter in the house any longer. She is not safe here. My doubts about my wife and my faith in the priest's remarks grew stronger after hearing what she told me. Why? My wife asks. Why aren't you able to keep her here? I stated that whatever killed our son may possibly hurt our daughter here, and I don't want to lose another kid of mine. She stated that there is no need to do so because everything will be okay in a matter of days. I asked, what do you mean it's only a matter of days? On this, she became agitated and stated, I mean, in a few days, the police will find that criminal and then we will be safe again. As a father, I was concerned for my child, but as a mother, I did not sense that care in her. When I looked at her, it seemed as if she wanted our daughter to stay in that house at any cost. But I ignored her and took my daughter to my sister's house. I also invited my wife to accompany me to my sister's place, but she said nothing and just stood there staring at us. I then informed her that I would be running late and would instead be spending the night at my sister's house. That is the reason I'm asking you to accompany me. She responded that she is fine here. After hearing this, I responded, "Okay, I'll arrive tomorrow as early as I can. Today, take care of yourself." I then took my daughter and left from there after stating this. When I was driving with my daughter told me, "Papa, I don't know why, but I feel unusual discomfort and fear from being with my mother right now. She had been staring at us in a peculiar way for a few days." I asked her, "Why do you feel like that, Ava?" On this, she stated, "Papa, I don't know why, but Mother has begun doing strange things since that day when we got home from school when we felt her more beautiful in the morning." Hearing this from my daughter, I felt quite strange and I quickly questioned her. "What strange things is your mother doing?" She stated, "Mother used to lick us with her tongue as if we were food for her and she was some kind of beast. When we were with her, she kept staring at us, which made me feel uneasy. I was terrified of those eyes of hers." Hearing this from my daughter, my faith in the pastor's words grew stronger, and instead of leaving my sister's house, I left my daughter with a friend nearby and immediately proceeded to my residence to follow my wife as instructed by the pastor. I parked my car a little further away from the house and strolled carefully towards it. I waited for my wife to leave the house while standing in the bushes some distance from my home. The thought once crossed my mind, would she have left before I arrived or had I not delayed in coming? Therefore, occasionally the pastor's remarks began to ruminate in my thoughts. Just now that I was thinking that, I saw my wife leaving the house. I began to follow her as well. What I witnessed after only a short stroll filled my eyes with terror. I noticed she had transformed into another woman. Her legs were folded and her hair was unkempt, and she was screaming extremely loud. And when she was crying, only one thing was said.
"One of my good prey has escaped from my grasp."
I was looking at that dreadful sight, hiding behind the same bushes, when she abruptly turned and glanced back. She sounded as if she heard some bushes move. Looking directly behind her, my entire body was seized with horror because when she looked back, her neck was back, but her entire body was forward, and her eyes were bloodshot, as though she was on the lookout for someone. Then a rabbit appeared from the bushes. When she saw the rabbit, she pounced on him and began gnawing on him raw. I was stuck with panic when I saw this scenario, but I gently departed while taking care of myself. And I was thinking of all this when I suddenly appeared on the road in front of your car. Hearing this from Benjamin, my hair stood on end and I realized that this man had been captured by a vast evil power, which is threatening the life of his family. Hearing his state and what had occurred to him now, my mind decided that I would not leave him alone in this war, and that I would also assist him in getting out of this crisis. After listening to Benjamin, I told him about myself and vowed to assist him in his situation. Hearing this, Benjamin asked, "How would you assist us in all of this?" I told him that, in this state, I would be unable to tell you anything right now. But yes, I can try to save you from all of these problems. But first, we must wait until daylight. It's late at night, and I am unable to take you to your home until we develop a plan for dealing with the demon because it is unsafe to do so. As we waited for morning, I immediately drove Benjamin to the same priest who had advised him of all of these things. When the priest noticed Benjamin there, he replied, "Now that you know the truth." When Benjamin heard this, he sobbed and begged the father to pardon him so that he might rescue his family and himself from their current predicament. Benjamin continued by asking, "Father, what happened to my wife? Did the same witch kill her as well?" "No," he replied. "Although your wife has already passed away, the witch has taken over her body and plans to sacrifice you and your daughter on the night of the full moon." Hearing this, Benjamin became terrified and began asking the priest, "Father, what should we do now? Please, suggest a solution." "Don't worry," the priest said. "You invite me to dinner today, but keep in mind that your wife should not be made aware of this." Benjamin said, "Please come today. You both are now my only source of support." Looking at me, the priest inquired, "Who is this boy?" "He is my friend, and he also wants to help me. Thus, he is with me." "Don't worry," the priest replied. "I will absolutely come." The priest now instructed Benjamin to return to his home and act normal. On this, Benjamin stated, "I will do as you say," and I dropped Benjamin off at his place. One thing that bothered me here was that the night of the full moon was tonight, and that witch was going to sacrifice Benjamin today. And perhaps the pastor should not have told Benjamin about this, since it would have worried him even more, and then our plan would not be jeopardized. The priest told him that he would arrive at his residence late at night. When Benjamin and his wife were sleeping in the room at night, his wife got up and went outdoors, just like the other night. Benjamin came out of his home after his wife had departed and brought the pastor and me in. The priest began his preparations after arriving. After a while, the priest began to pray some mantras. Amelia came running towards the priest, shouting outside because the priest's prayer had such strength. As soon as Amelia entered the house, she began shouting extremely loud and telling Benjamin in a very frightening voice that, "You did not act properly. I will not leave anyone. I'm going to drink everyone's blood today." Her scream was so powerful that we thought the mountain would close our ears. She returned to her previous form because the priest's prayers had caused her so much grief. The priest then told the witch, "Satan, calm down. Otherwise, I will immediately send you to hell." When she heard this, she burst out laughing and yelled angrily, "You can't hurt me. You too will perish at my hands." And then she went to assassinate Benjamin. As soon as she arrived at Benjamin, the priest sprayed holy water on her, causing her skin to burn. She glared angrily at the priest and yelled, causing the priest to flee and hit the wall. Because of the night of the full moon, she was far more powerful than we realized at the time. When he hit the wall, the priest went temporarily unconscious. As a result, we temporarily lost control of the witch. And now, she laughs at us with bloodshot eyes before slaughtering Benjamin. She threw me away with one of her blows as soon as I moved forward to stop her. Now that there was no one between Benjamin and her, she grabbed Benjamin's neck, lifted him up, and burst out laughing. Benjamin was still in the priest's hands, and he was still unconscious. Then she told Benjamin, "You know how I killed your son? Listen, I tore his neck with these jaws of mine before swallowing his soft head. After drinking his delicious blood, I dumped his body in the pond behind your house like waste. You all have to die on this day, but he died earlier. He came after me that night and saw me in this form. That's why I killed your son. You want to see your son's skull? Tell me. Want to see? Watch carefully." She put her hand in her mouth and took out a child's rotten skull and held it in her hand while speaking to Benjamin. "Look at your son's head." And as soon as she said that, she burst out laughing. When Benjamin saw this, he became angry and began beating her. But it seemed as if his blows had no effect on the witch. Seeing this, I realized that this isn't such a devil. But in order to deal with it, we'll have to use some different tactics. As I previously stated, I am a paranormal investigator, but I am much more than that. My father was a great occultist, and he had given me some things to use in times when we were caught in some supernatural crisis from which we couldn't get out. It was finally time for me to put that thing to use. The unique feature of this locket was that whoever wore it gained such vision and power that he could see things that no ordinary person could see with his own eyes. And he could keep any soul close to him in his body via the locket without having been possessed by that spirit. As a result, the wearer of this locket had unlimited power. This was the first time I used my locket in this manner. First, I held my locket and chanted a mantra taught to me by my father. After that, it was as if a different power began to operate within me. And the moment I opened my eyes, I could see the souls of his wife and child right behind Benjamin, attempting to force him to fight the witch, but their spirits were unable to reach him. That is when I used my locket to summon their souls into my body. As soon as I said this, it was as if the locket summoned them, and those souls rushed towards me and entered my body through my locket. It was as if a wonderful energy began to flow inside my body as soon as they entered my body. When the witch saw this, she immediately made Benjamin sit on the ground, and as soon as she opened her mouth to kill, in the blink of an eye, I made a blow on her, due to which she fell straight and fell outside, breaking the wall of the house. It was astounding to notice my body's strength and agility. I could also sense Benjamin's wife and son's rage at the witch, who tried to harm her family. When the witch stood up again, I slammed her to the ground with a kick to the face. She began to scream in agony. Meanwhile, the pastor regained consciousness and began reciting his mantras. Soon, a fire began to burn within that witch. As a result, she began to cry in pain. The priest then questioned, "Who are you, and who brought you here?" The witch claimed that, "I had arrived from a nearby deserted graveyard and discovered that his wife had died. Then I entered her body and waited for the night of the full moon so that I can slaughter them all and drink their blood." The priest then stated that, "The true home of a devil like you is in hell." He began intensifying the mantra so that the witch began to burn with smoke and was reduced to ashes within a few minutes. After that witch died, Benjamin's wife and son emerged from my locket and flew to heaven. The priest then placed the ashes in a bottle, carried it with him, and buried it in the church grounds so that the witch cannot harm anyone else. Benjamin thanked me once everything was completed. I then told him to take care of himself and his daughter before getting into my car and driving away to my next destination. Hey guys, Harrison here. I know I always say the same thing and most everyone should know who I am, but I'll reintroduce myself for all the newbies. I'm a paranormal investigator, and here I share with you the most incredible and bizarre stories I've experienced since I've had this crazy job. In the last case I told you, I had to face a strange and evil entity that pretended to take care of some children, only to kill them. I assure you that this story is really very, very different. You see, in my job, I have to deal with a lot of things: ghosts, entities, demons, and poltergeists. But I still never cease to be amazed. I've been doing this for so long, I can guess what's going on much earlier. But the case I'm going to tell you about, this case was one of the most mysterious, and you will be surprised to find out how it ended. It all started with an email. It was the daughter of the owner of a hotel in the middle of the road. The email said that the place was infested with things that they couldn't explain. You know, doors opening and closing, things falling off furniture, paranormal stuff. What caught my attention was that the owner of the hotel had a little history that caught my attention. He had been the victim of a paranormal event he had experienced as a child. A paranormal event that had left him orphaned. Had his past come back to haunt him? According to the owner's daughter, the ghost came since he bought the hotel, and the previous owners denied that there had been any ghost or anything out of the ordinary. I admit that this last part interested me, so I grabbed my truck and headed to the hotel for the night. Once I arrived, I noticed that the hotel was very poorly kept. This place was poorly located. It seemed strange to me that many people could come or that it was ever full. Another thing that caught my attention was that it was quite dirty and neglected. There were cobwebs everywhere. The place looked very dirty on the outside, and the choice of statues outside only made it more imposing. But you know what caught my attention the most? As soon as I arrived, there was a cleaner making sure the entrance was in perfect condition. Why would they choose to clean the entrance of the hotel, but the rest looked so decrepit? Once I walked in, I met Sarah and Butch. Sarah was the one who wrote me the email, and Butch was the father and owner of the hotel. At first I thought he was going to be against me going to his hotel to look for ghosts, but instead he seemed quite happy, which is rare for someone his age. Once I started to settle in, I sat down for a drink with father and daughter, and he told me the story of when he was a kid. It all started when they moved into his grandparents' abandoned house after they had died. As usual, everything started out well. The house was big and spacious, and my parents and I were very happy. But things quickly got out of control. While cleaning, his parents found a strange purple box that they couldn't open. Your father became obsessed with the box, wanting to open it at all costs. He tried screwdrivers and knives, smashing them against the floor. He tried everything. He didn't even care if he destroyed its contents or not. He just wanted to open the purple box. Butch told me he never knew how. But one day he opened it, and that day everything changed. The father began to carry the box everywhere he went, without telling anyone why. His behavior became much more erratic and his personality much more aggressive. He would yell at his wife and Butch for no reason, destroy furniture in the wee hours of the morning, and once, Butch said he saw him sitting on the top of his bed, staring at him, but with his face disfigured and distorted. After watching him for several minutes, the father would simply stand up and leave. The man's violence, aggression, and bizarre attitudes began to escalate more and more, to a point where they could no longer be controlled. And it was then, on a visit from the brother, that everything got out of control. In the midst of the familiar scene, the man began to vomit everywhere. As he vomited, he didn't stop laughing for a second. His laughter was insane, and he aimed his vomit at all the family members nearby. That man was no longer Butch's father, and everyone could tell just by looking at him. One thing led to another. The brother, the neighborhood priest, was closest to the father of Butch's family, witnessing all these things happening that seemed to have no explanation. Sometimes when Butch's father was acting normal, the glass would be broken next to him. Screams would be heard in the rest of the house, and sometimes he would claim to see people standing near him who weren't there. It all ended the way everyone thought it would. An exorcism. At that point, Butch's father was fully conscious. He was not in one of his fits of rage, and he had agreed to be chained. They took advantage of that moment to perform the ritual in the basement. At that point, Butch was asked to leave the room and wait outside the house. It was then that Butch told us about the most traumatic moment of his life. From outside the house, he began to hear screams, both from his father and the rest of the family. The screams were screams of pain. All Butch could do was cover his ears and wait for it all to end. After a few minutes, there was no more screaming. Butch's father simply walked out of the house crying. His face and body were bruised, and both arms were broken. The man walked in Butch's direction. Once he was next to him, he cried a little more intensely, stroked his head, and continued walking. Once he got to the street, a truck suddenly appeared and ran him over. Butch told me that trucks never passed by that place, hardly ever cars, but this truck came speeding by and had run over his father, who somehow seemed to know that this would be his fate. After that, Butch was taken to his grandparents' house, where he lived the rest of his youth without worries. But since he bought the hotel, the paranormal events returned, and they were more intense than ever. After telling this story, Butch began to cry, and his daughter comforted him. I think I had had enough for the night. I decided to finish eating and stay in one of the few rooms in the hotel. The food was excellent, very homey and delicious. It reminded me of those my grandmother used to make for me when I was little. The place felt very peaceful and warm, until I went to that room. Sarah took me to the room I was going to stay in, and let me tell you, I got a very bad feeling right away. The room was much colder. The place was much more abandoned than the rest of the hotel, and with every step I took, I could feel the wood creaking. I unpacked my suitcase and clothes and went to sleep quickly, turning off all the lights in the place. I lay down with my cell phone, waiting for the paranormal activity to begin. At first, nothing was happening. It was just a really creepy place, but normally, that has nothing to do with whether or not there are ghosts in the place. I was about to fall asleep when suddenly it started to happen. I felt a loud slamming door near me, and I woke up from surprise. Without fear, I peeled myself out of bed and looked at the door. There were no people or wind nearby, but still, the door had closed by itself. I went back to my room to look for equipment to search for paranormal beings, but when I turned around, I was shocked at what I was seeing. The closet door was open, and all my stuff had fallen out of the open suitcase. Suddenly, the cold became more and more intense. I could feel that something or someone was watching me, but I couldn't determine where it was coming from.
I began to hear noises throughout the hotel. These noises were like knocking, but there was something else. There was an additional sound that sounded very familiar, but I couldn't really identify where I remembered it from. I started to hear footsteps on the stairs, and without grabbing any of my equipment, I ran straight to the stairs. On it, I could see someone. It was a man dressed in clothes that looked 30 years old. The leg was bloody and his arms were broken. The man had an angry look on his face that he couldn't seem to control, but at the same time, his eyes were completely white. It all looked very familiar. This man directly matched the description of Butch's father. But there was something different. In his anecdote, this man seemed to be fighting something inside him, going back and forth between his own humanity. This thing he was seeing, it wasn't that. There wasn't a shred of humanity in his face. From the coldness radiating from his body and the sensation it made me feel, I could tell that this man no longer belonged to the world of the living, and that there was nothing left of Butch's father. As I watched him, the man finished coming down the stairs, and I lost sight of him. I ran quickly towards him, but there was no one there. The spirit had already disappeared. This spirit had no interest in me. He was looking for someone else. But then, why did he try to scare me out of the room? I rushed over and woke up Butch and Sarah. He was awake, but their daughter woke up completely terrified and confused. I told them that they had to leave the hotel immediately, that there was a force that they could not understand, and that it was surely after them. Sarah looked absolutely terrified, but Butch was acting strange. He didn't seem to be surprised by what I was saying, but at the same time, he was acting exaggerated and urgent. I decided not to pay too much attention to that and went upstairs to get my stuff. I wasn't planning on running away from the ghost, but I couldn't perform a purification or exorcism on the spur of the moment, and without the rest of the people involved being prepared. I was going to have to talk a lot with Butch and Sarah, and they were going to have to help me. When I got to the room, I felt something strange when I touched the door handle on the outside. A thread? That moment could have gone unnoticed since it was just a thread on the door. The thread was broken. Surely someone had kept the rest of the thread. It was then that my mind started to go faster and faster, understanding many things that were happening. I went back to my room and opened the closet where my clothes had fallen. I knocked on the wall of the closet. The sound was hollow. I ran to the empty room next door, and it was open. Someone had used the room recently, and it was a bit messy. I approached the closet in that room, and once I opened it, I saw a small door. Do you know where that door led to? To the closet of the room I was given. I quickly scanned the room, and there it was. The rest of the thread was on the floor. I went back to the room Butch gave me and checked everywhere. Cameras in the ashtray, on the wall, on the lamp. Microphones and speakers are everywhere. It was all fake. This was all a big lie. Furious, I went down the stairs and confronted Butch, grabbing him by his shirt and yelling at him. "What's the matter, Butch? Did you break your string and it got stuck in my door?"
I don't know what you're talking about. What's the matter with you?
"Harrison, have you lost your mind? You don't know anything, do you?"
What are you talking about?
"Do you know how long I have traveled here? Do you know why I did it? I could be helping families that's really in trouble. I could be saving someone's life."
I have no idea what you're talking about.
"Stop playing games, Butch. It's all lies. You manipulated the sounds. You manipulated the door and the closet. This whole thing was staged. That's why you're so picky about where you clean. That's why you want to keep this place so scary."
Dad, is it true? I'm sorry, Sarah. And you, Harrison, you have to understand me. I saw an opportunity here. Who do you think would come to this hotel if it wasn't for that? I'm a businessman.
Dad, the story you told me, it's a lie too, isn't it? You put it all together to make it scarier.
No, that story is true. Do you think I would lie about that? Although it was obvious that my father wasn't possessed, he was just sick. You're a scammer. All paranormal investigators and exorcists are a scam. What are you complaining about? Now you can do another one of your stories and my hotel would get more visitors. Everybody wins.
That is not why I do this.
Yeah, right.
One more thing.
What do you want?
How did you disguise like your father and then disappear? Was that you or someone else?
What? What are you trying to do? Do you really think I believe that?
Wait, so you're telling me you had nothing to do with Dad? You're a disgrace, Butch. You always were. Do you dare to respect my death? You use my death to get people to come to your pathetic hotel. This can't be real. I must be hallucinating. This can't be. Do you know why I cried harder when I saw you that day, Butch? Because the voices inside me were telling me to kill you. They were telling me to kill you like I killed the rest of my family. That's why I went on the road. I was wrong. I must have heard the voices. Once he said this, the spirit grabbed Butch by the hair and at a great speed took him running in the direction of the street. At that moment, I could feel what was going to happen. He was going to do what he hadn't dared to do so many years before. He was going to take Butch into the street. Sarah was standing next to me, completely frozen and crying. But I wasn't afraid. All this time, I was getting ready to act. To take Butch to the street, he had to go out the front door. And I was in the way. When he tried to walk past me, I quickly pulled out some holy water I had for emergency use and threw it directly in his face. The spirit let go of Butch and started backing away, burning. You have no business here, spirit. You have no connection to this man. This man's father is dead. You just want to take another life. Is it over? Yes. This was not a powerful spirit. It was one of those that play with your head. If the exorcism went wrong when your father was little, it was because they were not prepared to do it. Dad, are you all right? Dad? And that's how this story ends. Sarah had nothing to do with her father's lie, and she decided not to go back to the hotel. Butch never recovered from his encounter with his father and ended up in a psychiatric hospital. He still sees his father haunting him, but I personally corroborated that the spirit is no longer there. Perhaps it is guilt that still makes him see his father. My work with his family was over, but Butch's, it had just begun. Hey guys, Harrison here. In case you're new to the channel, I'll introduce myself. I'm a paranormal investigator. In the previous case, I told you about the curious case of Butch, a man who called me pretending there were ghosts in his hotel, just to get the public's attention. Little did I know that, while he was trying to scare me, the ghost of his father was haunting the hotel, trying to get revenge on his son for disrespecting him. I managed to defeat the ghost, but Butch never recovered from the encounter, and he ended up in a psychiatric hospital. Butch's daughter, Sarah, was the one who had originally contacted me, but she was not part of the lie and returned home after the incident. As nice to me as she was, I never expected to hear from her again, so when I received a new email from Sarah, I was intensely confused. The email said that the ghost of her grandfather, Butch's father, was still haunting her, even in her home. She was never the target, Butch was, but for some reason, she was the one being haunted. Every time he appeared, the ghost demanded that she bring Butch to him, attacking her in the process. Once I read the email, I knew I had to go help Sarah immediately. From what little I knew of her, she seemed like a good person, trying to help her father at his hotel, but getting angry at him for the lie he made. As I traveled to Sarah's house, I couldn't help but wonder in confusion what was going on. If the ghost was looking for Butch, why was it haunting Sarah? She wasn't even at the hotel anymore. She was at home, where the ghost had never gone. For some unknown reason, the ghost had attached itself to her. This case was full of unknowns, and I had to solve them. Once I got there, I met Sarah again. Her appearance was somewhat deteriorated, classic signs that she was being stalked by a paranormal being. The demon that had taken the form of Butch's father was not very strong, but rather one of those that tired and tortured you a little at a time and then attacked you when you were at your weakest. Unlike Butch, who never knew there was a demon in the hotel until the end, I could see how Sarah's health had deteriorated a lot in just a few months after everything happened. This was a clear sign that, unlike her father, she was not lying. I started checking her house back and forth, trying to see if she was telling me the truth. To be honest, the evidence was there, but after what her father had done, there was no harm in being sure. By the time I finished walking around the house, there was no doubt in my mind that Sarah was telling the truth. There was someone or something in that house, and whatever it was, it had very bad intentions. Once we sat down, Sarah began to tell me all about what she had been going through lately. She confessed to me that the paranormal activity never stopped, although she lied to herself that it must be her imagination and that, in case there really was something going on, it would stop when it saw that her father was not in the house. To her surprise, not only did this not happen, but things got more and more complicated. It all got worse one winter night, a few months after her father had been locked up in the asylum. She was alone, sleeping in her house, when suddenly she heard a noise. It was glass breaking, but it was not the glass of a window indicating that someone had entered the house, but it was another noise. The glass was much smaller. Sarah thought for sure she had left a window open and the wind had blown something, but when she got to the dining room of the house, she realized that it had not been the work of the wind. The noise of the glass was not a fallen picture or anything similar. It was a picture frame, and not just any picture frame. It was his father's picture frame. Sarah tried not to look for any paranormal explanation, but soon realized that this was really impossible. The picture frame was not in that room, but was placed in her bedroom, far away from there. The picture frame was destroyed in the middle of the dining room without any furniture or anything nearby. Someone had taken it to the center of the house and destroyed it. It was then that she looked down at the floor, and next to the glass of the destroyed picture frame, there was something else. Footprints. Boot prints. As confused as she was terrified, Sarah followed those boot prints. Something was wrong. Those boots were leading to her room where she had come from. She kept walking, and to her surprise, the boots ended up in her bedroom closet, right next to the bed where she had been sleeping just minutes before. Terrified, she slowly approached the closet door. Every second that passed, it was her praying that there was nothing on the other side. But she knew there was probably someone. Crying in terror, she gathered all her strength and opened the closet door. It was empty. As she breathed a sigh of relief, she heard a noise from the top of the closet. Taking a few steps back, she looked at the top of the closet in terror. There was nothing there either. At that moment, Sarah finally calmed down and returned to her bed. She was confused, sad, and hopeless. She knew there was something paranormal again. She knew she couldn't get rid of Grandpa's spirit, and she knew she would have to tell me again, but she really didn't want to. Unlike last time, she no longer had Butch to accompany her. She was all alone. As that terrifying thought made her cry, Sarah told me that she heard one more noise, but this one came from her own bed. More frightened than with the closet, Sarah pulled back her sheets again, expecting to find something. But again, there was nothing. Where is he? Where is Butch? It was then that Sarah made all her strength to free herself. She was running out of air, but somehow she had to get rid of her attacker. At that moment, Sarah told me that after a few seconds, she simply gave up. This was not a human force. No matter how hard she tried, she could not move this being's arm 1 centimeter. Little by little, she felt like she was fainting until she closed her eyes and did not open them again until the next day. When she woke up in the morning, she prayed that it had been nothing more than a dark dream, but it was not. When she looked in the mirror, she could see hand marks on her neck. At the same time, she realized that her neck hurt a lot and that she could hardly swallow saliva. At that moment, she showed me her neck, and yes, it was all purple with long, huge fingerprints all over it. Later that night, the presence of that old man in the house became much more oppressive. The paranormal activity could happen at any time and come in any form. Sometimes it was just pictures flying or chairs falling over. Other times it was extremely cold and doors banging nonstop. But other times, the paranormal activity was much more violent. When that happened, Sarah would get little hints that something bad was going to happen. Those clues could be shadows around the house, excessive smells of blood and metal, or even in some cases, her grandfather's voice wandering the house. Whenever the latter happened, Grandpa always said the same thing. "Where is Butch?" Once Sarah finished telling me about the encounters with her grandfather and the last moments before she emailed me again, I couldn't help but think of something. How could this demon be back? I had never seen anything like that. Once you banish a demon, it cannot come back. And I saw with my eyes how this demon was gone forever. I stayed exploring the house all night, looking for some paranormal activity or some moment where this being manifested itself, but nothing. It was the strangest feeling. I could sense that there was someone watching me, but it didn't want to be seen. Is a demon being afraid of me? That doesn't seem to be its true nature. Here, there was something I didn't know. Since I could not solve the problem, I asked Sarah if I could sleep over, to which she nodded happily, knowing that she was not going to spend the night alone. Once bedtime came, Sarah let me stay in Butch's room. Before going to sleep, I tried once again to check the room and wait for something to happen, but there was nothing. Was the spirit in the house waiting for me to leave? Without thinking too much, I went to sleep. If it didn't show up tomorrow, I would make it show up. The fact that I felt a presence in the house made it take me a long time to fall asleep. I knew it would not attack me in my sleep, as this type of demon uses fear of its victims to attack them. Before attacking me, it would surely wake me up to scare me. After a while, I managed to fall asleep, and when I woke up suddenly, something had changed in the room. The whole room was just white. Everything was white, drab, lifeless. I got out of bed, confused, realizing immediately that it was a dream. But this was no ordinary dream. I could feel my body and I was completely aware of everything that was happening. Someone brought me here. Someone wanted to confront me face to face, and I knew who. As if confirming my suspicions, in front of me was him, Sarah's grandfather, Butch's father, the person who was haunting this house. The old man was different than I remembered him. His eyes were normal. His face didn't look possessed, and he was talking as the real man, not the demon in his body.
Help. You have to help me. I don't want to be here.
How? I threw holy water on you. You shouldn't be here. No demon can come back once they are banished.
You still don't understand what's happening. No demon can come back unless...
Suddenly, the old man's face began to change. I could see how his face was full of pain, how he was resisting the possession, but it was useless. The demon in his body was slowly taking over him. But before it could do so, the man raised his hand one last time, pointing to a carpet strangely located in the corner of the house. Get away from me, demon! No demon can come back. No demon can come back unless someone invites him, shaken from sleep. It might not have been very clear, but the information Sarah's grandfather gave me was perfect to find out what was going on. Figuring out what I was going to find, I lifted the carpet in the corner of the house, and the only thing I found on the floor was a burn. It may not have been much, but I knew what it was, and that was all I needed. I knocked on Sarah's bedroom door. At first, I thought she was asleep, but the door opened by itself, and there was no one at the door. I thought something might have happened to her. Sarah? Sarah? Hey, I'm here. I just went to get a glass of water. What's wrong? I thought something had happened. You have to come with me to the nearest church. You are in danger. To the nearest church? Sarah, you need to have an exorcism. The demon may be haunting your father, but it's hooked on you. But why? You know why, Sarah. Why did you do it? I don't know what you mean. Listen, either you tell me why you summoned a demon to haunt your father, or I'll leave you alone with him. You understand? But how did you... Did you think a carpet could cover the candles you used in his room? Did you do it when he was in the hotel? What did you think was going to happen when the demon following you couldn't find your father? Did you think he was just going to leave? I'm sorry. We passed that point a long time ago. Sarah, why did you do it? Butch was doing something terrible, and you knew it. Using my dead grandfather to get more people to go to that awful hotel? Do you think I didn't realize that? I grew up with him. He was always a liar. But you didn't have to go that far. I've always been into the paranormal. Since I was a child, I always tried to understand what was happening to my grandfather. I couldn't let someone disrespect him like that. Did you know that your grandfather appeared in my dreams? Do you know what is happening to him? He is suffering. You brought him back from the dead only to be possessed after death. Your grandfather is not in peace. Now the demon won't leave no matter how many times I eliminate him. Because you invited him. He will be looking for your father, but he is still stalking you. I just wanted to... Sarah, behind you. We meet again, Harrison. I thank you for telling her everything you told her. You've given her enough fear that she can feed me, and I can do this. No. Look on the bright side. You can banish me now, and I definitely won't be back for a while. But now at least, I won't go alone. I'll take her soul with me. Get out of my sight, demon. I have to thank you today, Harrison. You may be a good paranormal investigator. You are not afraid of me, but you still have a long way to go. Finish fading away. Don't worry. We'll meet again. Maybe then you'll know my true form. And that's how it all ended. I could have banished this demon, but he was right. I was impulsive, and that helped Sarah die. I'm not going to lie to you. She brought it on herself, but it's my job to keep demons like this from achieving their goal. Frustrated and sad, I headed back to my truck, thinking about what that demon said to me before he disappeared. He may have said it to frustrate me, but he was right about one thing. Sooner or later, we will see each other again. I hadn't had a decent night's sleep in days when the call came in. Harrison Ward, paranormal investigator. That's what they call me. Though if you ask me, it's just as much about hunting for lost people as it is for ghosts. I've been around long enough to know that the two often go hand in hand. So when I received a call from a man living in Delmar Creek, a mid-sized town about a 3-hour drive from my own city, I was intrigued and immediately made my way there. When I arrived at his house, the worry etched across his face was palpable. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Ward. My name is Philip McDonald," he said, his voice trembling. "My daughter, Elise, works as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. I haven't heard from her in 4 days." He ran a hand through his hair, anxiety evident in every gesture. "Her job requires her to work late hours. It is normal for a shift to get over only around 12 in the night, so she always took the bus home. It's a quick route, direct and reliable. Except for one bus, the one that shows up only at the dead of night, right around the witching hour. They call it the midnight bus." "What do you mean by the midnight bus?" I asked, sitting up straight in my seat, the heaviness of his words settling in. His eyes darkened, and he began to explain. "It's a ghost bus. It doesn't follow any normal route. Instead, it stops at places that make no sense. I mean, it stops at random places, which makes it hard to predict. I have heard people say that the bus prowls the street during the late hours of the night, but it usually picks people up on Fridays. That is the day when people are most vulnerable to getting onboarded. Elise, too, has been missing since Friday." He paused, swallowing hard. "What else have you heard about this midnight bus?" I asked him while taking down notes. "Nothing much. People usually prefer not to discuss it. It makes everyone a bit uncomfortable, you know. But I've heard the stories while having a drink in the local pub. It plays music, something soft and melodious, and it lures people in. Those who get on it, they're never seen again. I've lost friends to that bus. Now, My own daughter is missing.
The defeat in his voice hung in the air like a shroud, and I felt the weight of his despair.
I need your help to find her,
he pleaded, desperation creeping into his tone.
If she got on that bus, I worry if I will ever see her again.
He spoke, tears streaming down his face. Don't worry, Mr. McDonald, I said, standing up. I am going to do everything in my power to find your daughter. So once I left Mr. McDonald's house, the first place I went to was the local police station. I wanted to check all the evidence they had so far on the midnight bus. Surely they must have tracked the disappearances of people who went missing before Elise. That might give me some vital clues. I was immediately directed to Sergeant Miller, a tall man whose face bore the weight of years on the force. He pulled a frayed file from the desk drawer, sliding it across to me. We've had a number of missing persons linked to what folks around here call the midnight bus, he said, his voice low. But the story goes back further than most realize. In the year 1930, a bus called the Croon Squad, carrying a group of musicians, suddenly vanished. It was last seen on one of the back roads late at night. The vehicles, the passengers, everything just disappeared. Over the years, people began reporting sightings of a ghostly bus that appears only at night, picking up people at random and, well, taking them somewhere no one comes back from. I raised an eyebrow. And what about the bodies? Did you find any bodies over the years? Miller looked uncomfortable, scratching his chin. We found some around the abandoned Abagnale Asylum, near the old cemetery. It's like someone drops them off there always after a week since their disappearance. We've kept patrols around the place, but we never catch anyone in the act. Has anyone ever come back alive? I asked, fully expecting him to say no. To my surprise, he hesitated before nodding. Just one. He's an old man now, practically a relic himself. He claims he survived because a priest found him and took his place by sacrificing himself. But that was a long time ago, and the survivor's memory is foggy. You'll find him at Shady Pines' home. I next headed to Shady Pines' old age home to meet the old man. He was frail, slumped in a wheelchair, his eyes clouded with age. The moment I mentioned the midnight bus, he seemed to suddenly recoil, his hands shaking as he tried to grasp the armrest of his wheelchair, his face drained of color and his eyes filled with fear. He began muttering, his voice growing louder and more frantic.
Collector! Collector! Collector!
What do you mean by collector? I asked, leaning in, but his expression was one of sheer terror.
Toll collector.
He stammered before his body went limp, and he fainted in his chair. As I left, a chill settled over me. Whoever this toll collector was, it was connected to the midnight bus in a way that reeked of something beyond my understanding. Once back in my hotel room, I spread out a map of Delmar Creek and got to work, marking each place where the midnight bus was known to appear and cross-referencing it with the dates and the locations of recent disappearances. It wasn't long before I started seeing some troubling patterns. Over the decades, the midnight bus had made various stops around town, shifting its route every few months. But recently, it had settled on 5 specific locations, each equal distance from the other, and known to have foot traffic even late at night. These locations were the St. Mary's Hospital, Delmar Creek Train Station, Vintage Movie House, Grace 24/7 Supermarket, and the local gas station. As I mapped the disappearances against the dates and locations, a shocking realization struck me. It became clear how the local police had overlooked some obvious clues. But for me being a paranormal investigator, the evidence was staring me right in the face. The series of stops formed an unsettling pattern resembling a pentagram. This couldn't be a coincidence. The midnight bus was following a ritualistic route. For each passenger it picked up, the next stop was strategically placed to complete the pentagram pattern, starting with St. Mary's Hospital, then Delmar Creek Train Station, followed by the Vintage Movie House, Grace Supermarket, and finally ending at the local gas station. Digging deeper, I cross-referenced the locations where bodies had been found, and a chill crawled up my spine. The abandoned Abagnale Asylum lay dead center within these points. No wonder the bodies had been turning up there. It was the heart of this sinister pattern. With only 2 days left on the clock, I now had a solid lead on where the next pickup was likely to happen. My eyes immediately gravitated towards the Delmar Creek train station on the map. Now all that was left for me to do was to stake out the area and be prepared, knowing that lives might depend on what I would uncover. When Friday arrived, I sat waiting in my car, gripping a small cross in my hand. From my conversations with the locals, I'd pieced together that hypnosis seemed to play a role in the disappearances, and I was determined not to fall victim to it myself. My eyes were locked on the small, unassuming bus stop just beyond the train station. From the shadows, I watched a young man, maybe in his early 30s, standing alone. Then a plain-looking bus pulled up and stopped in front of him. At first, he didn't seem interested in boarding, but suddenly, bright lights flared from the bus, its entire look transforming in an instant. Happy music pulsed through the air, and the man's expression softened, his eyes going distant as he slipped into a trance. I quickly got out of the car and ran toward him. As I approached, I saw the name Croon Squad painted on the side and glimpsed shadowy musicians inside, their faces looking pale and white even in the bright lights. The bus doors opened, and the driver, with a wide smile, beckoned the man inside. He lifted his foot onto the step, ready to board. But I managed to reach him just in time, grabbing his shoulder to stop him. He turned to look at me, his gaze distant and unfocused.
My wife, she's inside. I can hear her calling me,
he murmured, as if in a dream. She's gone, my friend, I said firmly. This isn't real. This is a trap. The driver's smile vanished, his face darkening as he shot me a look of pure malice. Ignoring him, I gave the young man a gentle push away and stepped onto the bus in his place. The instant I crossed the threshold, the music stopped. All eyes turned to me. The ghostly musicians, their hollow stares full of resentment toward me for disturbing their plans. Holding my cross tightly, I ignored their glares and let my gaze settle on the back of the bus, where Elise sat alone, staring into the void, her expression haunted and withdrawn. The driver's silence was heavy, his fury evident in every moment. He handed me a slip of paper, a ticket, though no payment was required, for now at least. Without a word, he restarted the engine, leaving the young man stranded at the deserted stop as the bus lurched forward into the darkness. I took the seat beside Elise, but she didn't acknowledge me, her gaze fixed on something beyond this world. As the bus rolled into the night, I braced myself for whatever lay ahead, fully aware that there was no turning back now. While I was sitting next to Elise, I caught the musicians' hostile glances directed at me. They were probably expecting me also to be in a trance just like Elise, but I was wide awake, alert and in full touch with reality. I had clearly disrupted their plans, and they made it obvious I wasn't a welcome presence on the bus. Then, two of the musicians slowly began to approach me with a threatening intent, but I lifted my cross in readiness. The sight of it made them recoil, forcing them to eventually retreat back to their seats. I tried to wake Elise, who sat in a trance staring into a void. I even chanted a few mantras, hoping to break her out of it, but nothing seemed to work. Meanwhile, the bus seemed to continue on its familiar route after departing from the train station, and it was now headed towards its next stop, the Vintage Movie House. There was only one key difference this time, though. It didn't stop at the movie house, but continued to drive past it, heading towards Gray's Supermarket, followed by the local gas station before finally looping back to the bus stop near St. Mary's Hospital, the exact spot from where Elise had boarded the bus a week earlier. I observed silently that the bus had just completed the pentagram ritual, and I secretly wondered what would follow next. But something strange happened as the bus passed the hospital and continued to move without stopping. Elise suddenly snapped back to her senses, breaking free from her trance. Panic spread across her face as she looked wide awake and fearful. Thankfully, I was sitting right beside her, ready to help and calm her down. Hello, Elise. I'm Harrison Ward, a paranormal investigator. Your father, Mr. McDonald, sent me to rescue you. Don't worry, I'm here to get you back to safety. But first, I need your help. Do you know where we're headed next? I asked as the bus began to slow down at a traffic stop. She nodded, sweat dripping down her forehead. Toll gate. I'm supposed to get off at the toll gate. All passengers have to leave the bus when another climbs on board, she explained, referencing to me. Do you know where this toll gate is? I asked, straining to listen. She nodded, fear etched across her face as she pointed with her hand. And at that moment, I understood why the bus had stopped. I turned to my side and saw an old abandoned building with a massive wrought iron gate in front. An old sign above read, Abagnale Mental Asylum, sending a chill down my spine. This was exactly the spot where the cops had discovered the bodies of previous passengers. Suddenly, as the bus slowed near the traffic light, the driver began revving the engine hard, sending thick plumes of smoke bellowing around us, quickly filling the air with an oppressive haze. Our visibility plummeted, and we started coughing as the smoke thickened around us. The driver then slammed the accelerator, and the bus suddenly lurched forward at full speed, even as we were all completely shrouded in smoke. Moments later, it came to a sudden halt in front of a large toll gate in the middle of the road. There was nothing else on either side of the gate. No cars, no passengers, nothing except the midnight bus parked in front of it. My eyes immediately gravitated toward a man dressed in a security uniform, seated in a booth near the gate. The toll collector. I silently muttered under my breath, recalling what the old man in the nursing home had said, and I immediately felt an uneasy feeling in my stomach. Suddenly, the environment around us became deathly silent. I could smell fear all around me. It was not just me or Elise. Even the musicians who were busy glaring at me all this while were now cowering in their seats. But the worst affected seemed to be the driver. He looked absolutely panic-stricken. In fact, I noticed he wasn't pale and white-looking like the musicians. He looked more like me or Elise. He was actually human. The driver slowly rose from his seat, turned toward Elise and said, "Your stop has arrived. You need to get off the bus." As Elise began to stand, I grabbed her hand, urging her to stay seated. "She's not getting down anywhere," I shouted. "She is going to stay here in the bus next to me." I watched the color drain from the driver's face as he seemed to wrestle with the dilemma of confronting me. His shoulders finally slumped, and he stepped off the bus, walking over to the booth where the security guard was seated. From where I sat, I could hear the guard's irritated voice ask, "Why are you here? Where's the passenger?" The driver leaned in and whispered something I couldn't quite catch, but the guard's reaction was immediate. He sprang to his feet and strode across the booth, visibly looking very angry. Then, to my horror, I watched as the guard's torso began to expand, his uniform ripping apart as his form began to change. He transformed into something monstrous, a towering demonic figure with the head of a crow, a human-like torso with enormous claw-like hands, and vast black wings that folded along his back. The creature clamped its massive clawed hands around the driver's face, squeezing it until his eyes bulged and finally burst, the driver's terrified screams filling the air. With a single brutal swipe, the creature next tore the skin clean off his face, leaving him shrieking in agony. The demon then leaned in close and drew in a deep, ghastly breath, sucking the driver's very soul from his body. In one final act of savage brutality, he yanked the driver's head from his shoulders and let the body drop lifeless to the ground. I finally realized why he addressed him as the toll collector and why everyone was so petrified of him. He took people's souls. I could already feel beads of sweat forming around my forehead as well. The toll collector then climbed onto the bus, his taloned finger extending to point at Elise and me. His menacing voice echoed through the vehicle as he warned, "If you don't get off now, your fate will be far worse than the driver's." I could feel Elise trembling beside me, but I wasn't about to back down, not now against this monster. I stepped forward, defiant, even as I felt fear rippling through my veins. But my act of defiance only seemed to enrage the creature further as he lurched toward me, his dark form swelling with anger. I moved quickly as well, slamming into him with all my strength, and together we crashed through the windshield, shattering the glass as we tumbled outside. I held my cross tightly in one hand as I faced off against the creature. He paused, taken aback by my resistance. He hissed, his eyes burning with fury as he called out to the musician ghosts. They rose from their seats and surrounded me, their spectral forms closing around me in all directions. Now outnumbered, I fought them off one by one, but they clawed and tore at me, pressing me down. As they overwhelmed me, the cross slipped from my grip, clattering to the floor. I then felt a cold, merciless hand wrap around my head, squeezing until pain shot through my skull. My vision blurred, and I could feel my eyes threatening to burst from the pressure as I screamed in agony. Just as the toll collector leaned in, ready to steal my soul, I reached for the amulet around my neck, a talisman my grandfather had gifted me, one he claimed held magical powers of protection. Gripping the amulet, I felt a surge of energy suddenly rip through my body. The demonic being was blasted backward, flinging 10 feet in the air. I held up the amulet, and a burst of light exploded from it, tearing through the musician ghosts around me, freeing me from their grasp. With renewed strength, I seized the cross from the ground and charged at the toll collector. Beams of light poured from the cross, piercing his form as he withered in agony. The dark creature let out a final, blood-curdling scream as his body disintegrated into a cloud of feathers that scattered to the ground. With the toll collector gone, the musicians' ghostly forms all began to soften, their faces showing relief as the curse of almost 100 years was finally lifted. They thanked me with a nod, each dissolving into the night air as they vanished, leaving Elise and me alone in silence. Elise and I looked around, finding ourselves stranded on the road in the middle of nowhere, with only a large toll booth looming in front of us. Suddenly, I remembered the bus tickets. Moving toward the toll collector's booth, I found a large box of collected tickets. I lit a match, setting the entire stack ablaze. As the flames consumed the tickets, the world around us began to spin, colors swirling until everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was back on an empty bus with Elise, parked in front of the Abigail Asylum. I heaved a huge sigh of relief to be back on familiar ground. When Mr. McDonald finally reunited with his daughter, he was overcome with emotion, his eyes brimming with gratitude. I felt a deep sense of happiness knowing I had helped them, and as I began my drive back home, a warm satisfaction settled over me. That night, as I lay in bed, my body bruised and my mind utterly exhausted, I drifted off to sleep. The moment I closed my eyes, I found myself standing before the Abigail Asylum, a slow laughter suddenly cracking through the stillness. The massive wrought iron gates swung open, beckoning me toward the crumbling structure cloaked in twisted vines and overgrown shrubs. Inside, I wandered through shadowed halls until I reached a locked door at the end of a darkened corridor. "You think you have solved the mystery, have you?" A voice called out as laughter ominously echoed through the air. I jolted awake, sitting upright in bed, sweat trickling down my forehead. Reaching for a glass of water, I noticed a single crow feather resting on my bedside table. From a very young age, the kids of my town were asked to stay away from the woods. I remember my grandma telling me to play in the park where all the other kids were, rather than venturing into the woods, especially in the evening or at night. I grew up with a fear of the woods and what lurked inside them. The fear only got prominent as I became older. So when I took up the job of a firefighter in our town's fire department, I knew one of these days I would be forced to go into the woods. My grandma used to tell me stories about the woods and how an evil lived inside it. It was rumored that she killed and ate anyone who crossed her path. So not even the elders of the town went into the forest. Our town was small and surrounded by forest from 3 sides. All the people in the town avoided the forest like a plague and only entered to get wood sometimes. Over the years, my grandma had told me many stories about the witch. The first time I stepped into the forest was on a very stressful day. The south side of the forest was on fire, and the fire was spreading pretty fast. It was my job to scout the woods and warn the hikers to get back to the town as soon as possible. I was terrified as hell, but decided to step into the forest nonetheless. The forest had many unmarked trails, and I decided to stick to the one that seemed the biggest of them all. I had a dirt bike which I rode into the forest slowly looking for the hikers. As I kept going on into the interior of the forest, the trees around me got thicker. The sunlight did not reach the ground due to dense overhanging branches, which made the forest floor dark. I remembered my training and kept my cool as I rode inside. There was no trace of any hikers, so I knew they must be deep in the forest. I needed to reach them before it was too late. The radio I was using to communicate with my team had lost range a few meters back, but I kept on proceeding. A mile after that, I spotted a small wooden house. The house looked like someone lived in it. My first thought was that maybe a hunter had built a cabin to live out here while he was busy chopping wood, or maybe it was a resting spot for the hikers. I parked my dirt bike against a tree and walked near the house. The door to the house was shut, and a metal chain was wrapped around the handle to prevent anyone from entering. However, the window beside the door was made up of glass, and I peeked through it. The house was one big room, and it looked like someone had lived in it recently. There was a small bed in one corner, and an old wooden table. There was no separate kitchen, but a small stove in another corner. It seemed like an ordinary hunting cabin until I spotted a small shelf tucked beside the bed that had several jars filled with murky liquid, and what was stored in the jars scared the shit out of me. Inside each jar was a small portion of human body parts. One of the jars had a finger. The other had an ear. One of them had an eye, while another had a nose. I was repelled by looking at it, and I instantly knew I hadn't stumbled upon a hunter's pad. Rather, it was the witch's home. As soon as that realization hit me, I ran towards my dirt bike, hopped on it, and drove off. A few meters away in the tree line, I spotted a white wild cat running parallel to my bike. If I sped up, it sped up. If I slowed down, the cat slowed down too. It was weird, as animals in the forest generally run away from people. But this cat seemed to follow me. I kept my cool and thought about the hikers I needed to reach. I kept on riding my bike, and suddenly the cat ran faster as it seemed to be moving in my direction rather than parallel to me. It was running a few meters away from me, and it leapt upon a big tree that was 15 meters ahead of me. The cat climbed the tree and sat on the branch that hung right above the path of my dirt bike. Now I was forced to pass from below it. The cat stared at me with its big yellow eyes. It did not meow, rather it hissed at me. It was a very weird cat. I stood there looking at it for several minutes and then finally decided to keep moving. The cat did not take its eyes off me while I passed from the road below. As soon as I passed the cat, I sped up and rushed forward. However, a part of me was compelled to look behind. I turned around and what I saw was enough to knock me off my dirt bike. Perched on the same branch was a freckled old woman wearing a black tunic with long black matted hair looking at me. I barely managed to balance my dirt bike and marched ahead with all I had in me. I had just encountered the witch my grandma had warned me about, and she could shapeshift. With sweat running down my forehead and my hands barely managing to hold the handle, I tried my best and kept riding for a few kilometers. Finally, around noon, I found the hikers I was looking for. I asked them to wait by the checkpoint where a rescue team was going to pick them up. But now, I had to return through the same route I came from, which meant there was the chance I would encounter the witch again. I started to recite prayers and rode my bike at a much slower pace, trying my best to avoid the witch and her home. But there was no other way out. I had to meet up with the other members of my team on a pre-decided spot.
As I came closer, I could see the old wooden house in the tree line, but there was no woman nor a cat anywhere to be seen. My first instinct was to look up in the trees, but the tree line was devoid of any animal, human, or even bird. I continued praying and sped up once more. As I came near the house, there was pin-drop silence, except for the roar of my dirt bike. As I was just about to pass the house, the front wheel of my bike got stuck in a branch, and I fell off my bike. Within minutes, the woman was behind me. She threw a rope around my neck, trying to choke me. I was struggling to free myself, but she was more powerful. She was slowly dragging me towards her house, and I was losing consciousness. But at that moment, before I lost my breath forever, I remembered the pocket knife I had in my back pocket. I removed it and stabbed the witch in her thigh. Her scream echoed through the forest, and for a split second, she let go of the rope, clutching her bleeding thigh. I freed myself and stood up, still feeling a bit dazed due to the lack of oxygen. I did not pick up my bike, nor did I bother to take my pocket knife, which was still buried in her thigh. I started to run as fast as I could. I could hear rapid footsteps behind me, and as I turned, a big white feral cat was running behind me, waiting to jump on me. However, she wasn't as fast as before, as one of her feet was bleeding profoundly. I managed to cross a distance of a few meters, and suddenly the footsteps stopped. I turned around, and the witch was standing in between two big trees, glaring at me. It seemed like she couldn't cross the threshold of those trees. She was trapped in that part of that forest, and anyone who passed through it was her victim. I was crying tears of relief. Soon, my radio picked up the signal, and I heard one of my teammates say that the fire was contained. I immediately informed them that the hikers were safe and that I needed some assistance to get back to town. 2 days later, I woke up in a hospital with my family all around me. I asked for my grandma before speaking to anyone else. I wanted to know the witch's story. For the first time, my grandma told me the truth about the forest witch and why she attacked people. Turns out, she was the daughter of one of the founding members of our town. She was an introverted girl with a speaking disability, which made her a great disappointment to her family. Many kids in town mocked and bullied her. But as she got older, she found solace in the woods. But on one evening while she was strolling in the woods, some kids from the village played a prank on her, due to which she fell from a tree and hurt her head pretty badly. She did recover physically, but the fall had traumatized her to the extent that she hated the sight of people and started practicing black magic. As the years passed, she moved into the forest and hardly ever came out. She perceived all the people as a threat, and that's why she attacked anyone who passed through her territory. She kills people and eats their flesh, and stores their body parts in the jar for her rituals. People call her a witch as she is a cannibal and had dark powers. Years have passed since my encounter with the forest witch, but to date, people go missing in the forest, and I still think about what would have been my fate if I wasn't able to escape. I was 10 years old when we moved into that house. It was big, bigger than we were used to. My parents always said it was an amazing opportunity, that we would finally have the space we always wanted. But from day one, something didn't feel right. I didn't know how to explain it. My parents were busy unpacking boxes, and my oldest sister was excited that she would finally have her room. But I couldn't shake a strange feeling. Something about that house was making me nervous. The room I shared with my sister was down the hall on the second floor. The room was across the hall, which was a good thing. Imagine how scary it would be to see the whole hallway. The door was always ajar. I didn't like to see out of the room, but I needed the door half open so some light would come in. It wasn't fear that I felt at first. It was more like discomfort. The first few nights, every time I opened my eyes, I forced myself to close them quickly. Something told me I didn't want to see beyond the darkness of the hallway, but I couldn't help it. And then, one night, I saw it.
the light in the hallway began to flicker on and off. It flickered as if someone was fiddling with the switch. It couldn't be my sister. She was sleeping soundly in the bed next to me. I tried to ignore it. I turned over, pulling the covers over my head. It was just a light, I told myself. At that moment, I didn't try to look for logical explanations. I didn't try to deal with it rationally or even scream for my parents. I was only 10 years old. I was terrified and paralyzed. I kept covering my head until at some point I fell asleep. The next morning, I told my sister what had happened. Her reaction was what I expected. She didn't believe me. She laughed and said to me that I had probably dreamt it. She never woke up for anything. She was the heaviest sleeper anyone could imagine. That bothered me, but I tried not to dwell on it. Maybe she was right, and I had imagined it. That night, I woke up again. This time, it wasn't the light that woke me, but a soft sound, as if something was scraping the floor. I sat up in bed, and when I looked out into the hallway, I saw it again. The light was flickering, but now it was flickering slower. On, off, on, off. My eyes wouldn't leave the door, hoping to see someone, one of my parents, or something wrong with the light. Anything that could explain what was happening. I spoke softly to my sister. I whispered her name several times, but she didn't move. I knew she would believe me if I woke her up, but if there was someone on the other side of the door, she would be alerted if she screamed. So I stayed quiet, watching the light continue its slow, disturbing rhythm. I couldn't sleep anymore that night, but when dawn broke, I tried to talk to her again. This time, she didn't even bother to answer me. My mom, when I mentioned to her about the light, told me that maybe there was a malfunction in the electrical system. But it wasn't just the light that bothered me. It was something else, something I didn't know how to explain to them. It wasn't just the lights. Something else was going on in that house. One night, everything intensified. I woke up as usual, but this time, the hallway light was on all the way. It wasn't flickering, it was just on. I stared at it, waiting for something to happen. Nothing. Nothing happened. So I decided that maybe it was time to try to sleep. Maybe whatever was going on was over. Suddenly, I heard a noise next to me, and I opened my eyes again. It was as if someone was breathing. I quickly turned to my sister, thinking maybe she was awake. But no, she was sleeping soundly, as usual. Suddenly, the hallway was filled with darkness. Not because the light had gone out, but because there was a shadow behind the door. I stayed hidden in my sheets for a few seconds until the shadow disappeared. At that very moment, I got out of bed and went to the door to close it. It was dark, but we were safe now. I lay down, trying to calm down, but that's when I looked at the door and noticed something. The door was open. How could it have happened? I had closed it a second ago. I lay still in bed, turned my back to the door, and closed my eyes as tightly as I could, trying to ignore it, to pretend I didn't care. But then I felt it. Something or someone was next to me. At first, I thought it was my sister, that maybe she had woken up from all the noise I had made and had come to my bed. I spoke to her a little louder, surprised that she had woken up, but suddenly I heard her voice, confused, coming from her bed, away from me. I pulled the sheets off me, scared, expecting to see someone beside me. But there was no one. Fear ran through my body, and just then, something grabbed my foot. I screamed, and my sister woke up immediately, alarmed. She also screamed when she saw me struggling with whatever it was that had me trapped. I tried to break free, but the invisible hand was pulling me forcefully to the edge of the bed. I broke free and got out of bed to hug my sister. She tried to turn on the light, but the lights in the room wouldn't come on. The door had slammed shut, and though we pounded desperately, we couldn't open it. We were stuck there, both of us crying and screaming for help. Suddenly, as we pounded on the door, I saw something that paralyzed me. In the distance, next to my bed, a figure began to materialize. It was not human. She was tall, too tall, and although her body was a black shadow, there was something on her face that I couldn't ignore.
glowing red eyes that watched us without moving. I felt short of breath. I clutched my chest, unable to breathe, and fell to the ground. My sister also fell beside me, choking. At first I thought it was fear, but then I realized that we were both experiencing the same thing. Something was taking the air out of us. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. The pain in my chest intensified. The pain in my chest was intensifying as if something was crushing me. Everything around me began to fade, and before I lost consciousness, the last thing I saw was my parents coming through the door. At first, they were confused and asking us what happened. I looked to the side and the black shadow was gone. My mother was hugging my sister, who seemed to be catching her breath, and my father was making sure I could breathe well. When my father lifted me, I couldn't help but look up. I was up. The shadow from before was above us. My mom looked at my face in surprise and also saw the ceiling. She was as terrified as I was. I screamed that there was something on the ceiling, and my dad almost let go of me from fear. Something was staring at us from above. It could stretch out, it could attack us, but it didn't. It just watched us. My parents pulled us out of the room just in time. I felt them lift me, but everything was blurry. I could barely see, but I knew something had changed when I heard my mom scream. My dad had seen it too, if only for a second. I could tell by the way he held me as if he was as scared as I was. That night, my parents watched the security camera footage. I didn't see them, but I heard his screams. They stayed up late, watching and rewinding the videos. From what they told me, the hallway camera showed something pulling me out of bed, and just before the camera stopped recording, you could see the shadows moving in the hallway. My dad didn't say anything else after that. He didn't mention the lights again. He didn't talk about the shadow being or try to come up with a rational explanation. I knew he felt guilty for not doing something sooner. From that night on, we never slept in that room again. We slept with our parents for a few days until they finally decided that we should move out of the house. We moved into our grandparents' house for a while, and a few months later, my parents sold the house. They bought a much smaller apartment, but no one complained. We just wanted to be away from that place and not think about it anymore. Now it was someone else's problem.
My shift starts when the rest of the city begins to shut down. I work security at a public hospital in Buenos Aires, the kind that feels like it hasn't been cleaned properly since the 80s. That night, everything felt slower than usual. The monitors flickered more than normal, the power surged twice, and my walkie cut off mid-sentence. But I didn't care. I was halfway through a cigarette when the main entrance sensor chimed. I leaned forward and looked at the screen. A man had just walked in barefoot. He looked wrong. He didn't speak at first. He stood just inside the door, staring straight ahead like he didn't know where he was. His t-shirt was soaked in sweat, clinging to his chest like he'd been running, and his lips were dry and cracked. He didn't blink much. When I walked up to him, I could hear his breathing, shaky, uneven, like he was trying not to panic but barely holding it together. "Can you help me?" His voice wasn't desperate, but confused, like he couldn't believe he was even asking. I asked him if he was hurt, if he needed a doctor, or if he wanted to sit down, but he just stared past me, blinking slowly like he didn't understand the words. I told him to wait, turned around to radio the front desk nurse, and when I turned back, he was gone. He didn't walk past me. He didn't make a sound. The door didn't open again. He just disappeared, like he'd been erased from the hallway. I checked every corner of the floor, ran past the elevators, even opened the stairwell doors. Nothing. The next night, it was close to 3 a.m. when I heard the sensor chime again. My pulse spiked instantly. I looked at the monitor, and there he was, standing in the same exact spot, barefoot, staring at the ceiling. I got up slowly, keeping my hand near the walkie, and walked out to the hallway. He hadn't moved. He looked worse. His face was pale and his eyes were glassy, like he hadn't slept in days. I approached him carefully, not wanting to startle him again, and asked him again if he needed help. This time, he didn't speak. I asked where he went the night before. He just kept looking up, like the ceiling had something written on it. "Do you remember me? You came in last night." He slowly turned his head to look at me, his mouth twitching slightly, like he was trying to say something but couldn't form the words. I asked if he had family, if someone was looking for him. He shook his head. I asked what he remembered. He said nothing at first, then stammered that he didn't know who he was. His hands began to shake. Suddenly, he broke down. He clutched his face, began crying violently, knees buckling as he tried to stay upright. He kept repeating that he didn't know what was happening, that everything felt wrong, like he woke up in the wrong world. Before I could reach him, he turned and bolted down the hallway. I ran after him, but by the time I got to the corridor's end, he was already gone. I checked every room. I even opened the emergency exit and looked down the stairwell. Nothing. It was like he vanished mid-sprint, but this time it didn't feel like a hallucination. The air felt charged, not heavier, meaner. The next afternoon before my shift, 2 of the morning guards pulled me aside. They looked uncomfortable, like they didn't want to be the ones to say what they had to say. One of them had copied some surveillance footage to a flash drive. He loaded the video on a laptop, and I saw myself, standing in the hallway at 2:58 a.m., talking to someone, gesturing, pausing like I was listening, but no one was there. Just me, waving my arms, nodding, pacing slightly. Then, if it wasn't already weird enough, the front doors slid open on their own, triggering the sensor exactly when he would have walked in. But on the footage, the doors just opened to nothing. They closed again 20 seconds later. No one visible. I stared at that screen for a full minute, trying to process what I was seeing. I swore on my life I talked to someone. He was right in front of me. The guards didn't laugh. They didn't joke. One of them looked pale. He whispered that weird stuff happens here sometimes, that I wasn't the first to talk to someone that wasn't there. That night during my shift, nothing happened. The hospital was quieter than usual. I couldn't even hear the usual metal creaks from the pipes. When I got home, my head was spinning from lack of sleep. I threw my bag on the floor, collapsed on the mattress, and closed my eyes. I should have checked if I was alone. I opened my eyes because something felt wrong. Not the usual kind of wrong. Wrong like someone was standing right beside me. He was at the foot of my bed. The same man, but different. His skin was torn open in places, raw like he'd been dragged across asphalt. His arm was twisted unnaturally, dangling from his shoulder. His jaw was dislocated and hanging to one side. One eye was swollen shut. Now I remember. I was confused. I didn't know where to go. I ran outside of the hospital. I was very scared. And then I saw a car coming at me at full speed. After that, everything was even more confusing. His voice was broken, wet. He took a step forward and I scrambled up, heart racing, staring at him. He didn't chase me. He just looked devastated. "You have to help me. I'm cold. Very cold. I see them. They're like shadows. They're coming for me. I don't know who they are, but I feel they want to take me to a place even colder. I don't want to go. I'm scared." I ran. Full sprint. Didn't look back. I never ran that fast in my whole life. I dove under the kitchen table, crouched there like a kid. The footsteps came slow, measured, closer. He knelt beside the table and began crying. Not quiet tears, loud, helpless sobs. I felt bad for him, but I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." Then everything went silent. When I peeked out, he was gone. Just gone. But something in the air felt final, like he had said what he needed. The next morning, I didn't bother clocking in. I went straight to records. I didn't ask for permission. I just walked in and searched the reports from the last 3 days. Eventually, I found it. A male, approximately 30 years old, brought in by ambulance after being struck by a car outside the hospital gates. Time of death? 4:11 a.m. Unidentified. No ID, no phone. Barefoot. Same shirt. Died on impact. face partially destroyed from the crash. I gave a description. The nurse pulled the record. She paused when she read it and then looked up at me, visibly uncomfortable. She told me it matched. No one claimed the body. They buried him anonymously in a city cemetery. I remember staring at the screen, hands shaking, realizing he came back not to haunt me, but to remember himself. A few days later, I bought white flowers and took them to the cemetery. They'd buried him under a cement marker with no name, just a number and a date. I sat by it for an hour, didn't say much. I just stayed, in case he was still listening. I never saw him again.
I was 13 when it started entering my room at night and sitting on my bed like it owned the place. I am 18 now, and I still sleep in the same room because my parents never believed there was anything to escape from. This was not a nightmare that faded with daylight, and it is not a story I invented for attention. It was something that pressed into my mattress and left marks on my body. My room is small with a bed under the window and a narrow door facing the hallway where my parents' room is only a few steps away. The walls are thin enough to hear footsteps and the television downstairs, so I always know when everyone is asleep. Nothing strange happens during the day, and nothing ever moves while someone else is in the room with me. It only comes when I am alone and the house is completely still. The first nights began with silence that felt controlled, as if every normal sound had been switched off at once. I would wake up suddenly, fully aware, staring at the ceiling while my chest tightened without warning. My body would stiffen before I even saw it, like it knew something had entered the room. That reaction became predictable, and that predictability made it worse. I was not a little kid imagining monsters, and I was old enough to understand that what I was seeing did not belong inside a normal house. That is what made it terrifying, because I had no excuse to hide behind. I knew it was there. Before it would show itself clearly, the mattress would dip near my legs as if someone had carefully placed weight on the edge of the bed. I would try to move my foot to confirm I was awake, but nothing below my neck would respond. My breathing would speed up, and I could feel my heart pounding hard enough to shake my ribs. That was when I understood I was not alone. It sat on my bed with long, thin limbs folded under its body and a head slightly too large for its frame. Its skin looked dry and tight, and its eyes stayed wide open without blinking. It leaned forward slowly and pressed 2 dark nails into my stomach through my shirt. The pressure went deeper than skin, even though nothing broke. I could not lift my arms, and I could not turn away while it studied my face like I was an object. Its mouth would open slightly, and I could see dark residue between its teeth as it moved closer. It never spoke, and it never rushed. It acted patient. In the morning, I had round swollen marks around my abdomen that hurt when I pressed down. My parents told me I must have scratched myself, and my brother Miles laughed and said I was stressed from school. They checked my room and found nothing. The next night, it came back. Before the worst visits, I would wake up seconds before it appeared, already tense and unable to relax even for a moment. I would lie there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the mattress to sink again because I knew it would. The silence would settle over the house like a switch had been flipped. My body would lock completely before I even saw it move. It began climbing onto my torso instead of sitting at the edge of the bed, placing its knees against my ribs and its palms flat against my stomach. It pressed harder each time, slow and steady, as if testing how much force I could handle. I felt pressure deep under my skin that made my vision blur. I tried to scream, but only air moved in my throat. One night, it pushed so hard that my back arched off the mattress, and I felt something inside my abdomen shift under its palm. Its face lowered until it was inches from mine, and its eyes scanned me without blinking. I forced my arms to lift, and they trembled uselessly before dropping again. I had no control over my own body. My parents installed a camera in my room and stayed awake outside my door for several nights. During those nights, nothing happened, and the footage showed me sleeping normally. They removed the camera after deciding this was stress or sleep paralysis. The next night it returned and pressed deeper than ever. The night everything changed, I fell asleep in the back of my parents' car while my father was driving us home from my aunt's house. I remember the streetlights passing by and trying to stay awake because I did not trust sleep anymore. My body ignored me and shut down. When I opened my eyes, I was in my own bed with my shoes still on. There was no sound of a door opening or footsteps in the hallway. The nightlight was on and my room looked untouched. My heart began racing immediately because I knew what silence like that meant. I tried to sit up quickly, but my legs stopped halfway and froze in place. The mattress dropped behind me before I could turn around fully. It was closer than ever, its fingers already gripping my shoulders firmly. It slid one hand under my shirt and pressed hard against my stomach, and the pulling sensation returned stronger than before. I felt like something inside me was being drawn toward its palm. It leaned forward until our foreheads touched, and I could see cracks on its lips and dryness around its eyes. I tried to push it away again, but my arms would not respond. I was completely trapped inside my own body while it examined me up close. The pressure increased steadily, and I felt pain spreading through my abdomen in waves that made it hard to breathe. Its fingers dug in without breaking skin, and my back lifted off the mattress under the force. I could not close my eyes or turn my head. I could only stare at it. It held its palm flat against my stomach and stayed there, unmoving, as if waiting for something to happen under my skin. The pulling sensation intensified, and I felt panic building fast because I did not know what it was taking from me. My chest tightened, and I thought I might pass out. The door suddenly opened, and Miles stepped into the room asking what I was doing awake. The weight vanished instantly, and I collapsed forward onto the bed, gasping for air. My brother looked around confused because there was nothing there. I started crying without control while he stood in the doorway. That was the closest it ever got to doing something worse than leaving marks. After that night, the visits became less frequent, but they did not stop completely. When I was 17, it appeared again after months of absence, standing beside my bed instead of climbing onto it immediately. My body locked as usual, and I felt the familiar wave of fear rising in my chest. It reached out and placed its hand lightly against my stomach. This time, it did not press deeply. It held its palm there for several seconds as if checking something, then slowly withdrew. Its head tilted slightly while it studied my face. I did not move because I could not. It stepped back from the bed and disappeared without sound or warning. I remained frozen for several minutes after it was gone. That was the last intense encounter I remember clearly. I am 18 now, and it still comes sometimes, though far less often than when I was 13. I wake up seconds before it arrives, and my body still locks without any permission. Sometimes I find faint circular marks on my lower abdomen in the morning. My parents pretended nothing ever happened, and Miles moved out last year, so I face the nights alone again. When it stands near my bed now, it does not always touch me, but I never know when that will change. I do not feel stronger with age. I live waiting for the next visit, knowing I will not be able to move when it happens. I do not know what it wants or how long it plans to keep coming back. I only know that it has never fully left. This story is based on the creepypasta of The Seed Eater, an online horror tale about a thin humanoid entity that visits children at night while they are awake but unable to move. The creature sits on the bed and presses its hands into the child's abdomen, leaving circular marks by morning without breaking the skin. Adults never see it, even when they monitor the room, which deepens the sense of isolation. As the child grows older, the visits become less frequent, but the entity never fully disappears.
Hi guys, my name is Jasper, and I'm a writer. And being a writer means I am constantly in search of inspiration to write great stories about. This time, I am planning to write a book about all the famous urban legends from all over the world. While doing my research, I came across an urban legend of the witches. This legend can be found in many countries worldwide, be it Norway, India, America, Japan, or Mexico. But one story in particular caught my attention. This story takes place on a dark, scary night in a rural area in India. The story starts with a man named Ali who was traveling due to his job. Ali loved his job, but if there was one more thing he loved more, that was photography. Whenever he went on an overnight trip, he made sure to carry his camera with him. Ali was very good at photography, and many of his pictures were displayed in exhibitions. Some were even published in esteemed magazines and newspapers. On one such weekend, Ali, who lived and worked in Mumbai, had to travel to Kerala, a state in southwest India, for some work related to his job. Ali was delighted to visit the state he hadn't visited before. So as soon as he was asked by his boss to leave, Ali took the night flight to Kerala. As he was done with his work, he decided to explore the surrounding areas and perhaps see some famous tourist spots in the vicinity. He asked the local people about the places he could explore, and most of them told him about a beautiful large waterfall that was no more than 20 kilometers away from the city he was in. The next morning, Ali took a local bus and visited the waterfall. He planned to get back to the town by evening so he could catch his night flight back to Mumbai. He reached the waterfall and the place was crowded. So many tourists had gathered to see the iconic waterfall that Ali could barely get any decent pictures. Defeated, he decided to return to the small bus stop and wait for a bus back to the town. After waiting for about an hour or so, Ali wasn't able to catch even one bus. He was tired and bored out of his mind and wanted to pee. Without thinking much about it, he stood beneath a nearby tree, hung his bag to a long nail that was sticking out of the tree, and relieved himself. He took his bag, but while taking it off the nail, he removed the nail from the tree by mistake. Not paying much attention, he dropped the nail on the ground and returned to the bus stop. Not 5 minutes later, a car stopped right in front of Ali, and the driver said, "What are you doing here, sir?" "I am stranded on this road, I believe. There is no bus going to the town, and I need to reach the town before evening. I have been waiting here for an hour." "Get in the car. I am going to the town. I can drop you off." Ali was thrilled, and without any hesitation, he got in the car. It was around afternoon now. "Thank you so much, sir, for offering me a ride. I am Ali, by the way." "Oh, no problem. I'm Victor D'Souza, and you would have not gotten a bus today anyways." "Why, sir?" asked Ali. "There is a bus strike going on in town, so the local bus service is unavailable at the moment." "Oh, that explains why I could not get a bus." "Also, Ali, what brings you here?" Ali was delighted to answer the question. "I work for an IT company, and work takes me all over the country. This time, I landed in Kerala and decided to do some sightseeing after work. I love photography. But this time, unfortunately, the waterfall was crowded and I couldn't get a good shot." If you have time, can I show you an offbeat spot that has a waterfall too? You can click your pictures there." "Sure," said Ali. Victor and Ali spoke about general topics during their drive when suddenly, Victor asked Ali, "Do you mind telling me what you are doing near the tree beside the bus stop where I picked you up from?" They were 2 hours into the drive now, and the sun had begun to set already. "Oh," Ali laughed sheepishly and said, "Well, I was relieving myself." You must not be aware, but any resident would not have dared go near the bus stop, let alone the tree." "Why?" "It's believed that a witch used to live on the tree many, many years ago." Ali laughed out loud. "Come on, Victor. We live in the 21st century. Do not tell me about a stupid urban legend. You may think it's funny, but 6 people died in the village in the most horrible way. All of those people had gone near the tree. It's a pretty isolated area. It could have been an animal attack. 6 people dying after visiting the same place does not seem like a coincidence. Everyone believes that it was the witch's doing. After the incident, a very learned priest was called by the villagers to put an end to the witch. But he wasn't able to banish the evil spirit from this world. Instead,
He managed to capture the witch in the tree and shut off her from the world with the help of a long nail. Yeah, then I guess I freed the witch, Ali said, still amused. It was rapidly getting dark now. What do you mean, Ali? Victor asked, a little bit panicked. While I was peeing, I hung my bag on the nail and it fell when I took my bag off. I let it be on the ground and that's when you drove there. My God, Ali, I don't know what will happen now. It's better if we reach the town soon. Hey, watch out! Screamed Ali. Victor steered the car off the road and got out of it. Hey, are you nuts? Why did you stand in the middle of the street like this? I could have driven over you. Ali could hear Victor screaming at the woman who had stood in the middle of the road, but could not hear what the woman said to Victor. Soon, the two returned to the car, and the woman, who was dressed in white, sat in the back seat. She too wants to go to the town, but just like you, she can't due to the bus strike, said Victor. Ali turned to the woman, who was stunningly beautiful, and introduced himself. Hey, I'm Ali. I'm Mira, said the lady. Their conversation steered back to the topic of the witch and how Ali had possibly freed the witch. This is when Mira spoke. I do not think the witch can change her form. Before Ali could ask anything else, Victor informed him that the spot they spoke earlier about was just a few minutes away, and although it was dark outside now, he could at least see the spot. Ali agreed, and the three reached the said spot. Victor parked the car and told Mira to wait inside, as they both will return shortly. Victor led Ali towards the spot, which was in the woods. Hey, there is your waterfall. Victor pointed in the distance. Go ahead and smoke, and I will smoke a cigarette here. Okay, said Ali, and walked ahead with his camera, which could click pictures in the dark as well. That's when Victor got a message on his cell phone. And what the message read sucked the living soul out of Victor. He could see Ali in the distance, busy with his camera. And from behind, he heard anklets, meaning a woman was walking towards him. A few minutes later, a feminine hand landed on his shoulder, and he knew what to expect. It was Mira. She said, the police came looking for the driver of the car, so I decided to fetch you. They said they found a dead body a few kilometers away. That's when Victor showed the message to Mira, and she too looked equally terrified. Meanwhile, Ali turned with his camera hanging off his neck, and a creepy smile on his face spoke. Yes, she does change forms. A few hours later, the police found the mutilated bodies of Victor and Mira near the waterfall, and on Victor's phone was the message that had the picture of the dead body, who was none other than the real Ali. My name is Aiden, and I used to be obsessed with backrooms. Nowadays, anyone who loves urban legends on the internet knows what a backroom is. But it wasn't always like that. Back in the day, when they were not popular at all, I was one of those people obsessed with this urban legend. I knew every backroom level inside out. And there was nothing else I wanted to do more than explore my favorite level. Today, I completely stopped consuming any backroom content. Do you know why? Because if the experience I had that day taught me anything, it's that backrooms are not only real, but it's impossible to understand their rules. We are mere humans trying to create logic out of something beyond human comprehension. And like all curious humans playing beyond their limits, I would learn this lesson in the worst way possible. I will tell you how it all started. Remember when I just told you that I always had a dream of exploring my favorite backroom level? Well, that level was 178. The level is known as the Japanese level. The legends of that country speak of this level as a shrine. A level oriented in a traditional Japanese house where travelers can find some peace. Many people get trapped in this level forever. Not because it has a death trap or because there are monsters to lock them in. No, because of its beauty and tranquility. In this level, there is nothing negative. No monsters, no entities, no labyrinths, just peace. Now, the way to access this level? It was somewhat complicated. You had to previously pass through many other levels, and to be honest, The more I knew about them, the less I wanted to take the risk of entering. I started to think too much about level 178. It had become an obsession, and this was a dangerous thing. Not many people know it, but one of the easiest ways to enter the back rooms was to be thinking about them at bedtime. That's why, always, when I went to sleep, I thought about something else. But one day I couldn't do it. That day I had too much to drink. I had come back from a bar with my friends and instantly fell into bed. You know, at that moment, I was thinking about the back rooms and how nice it would be to be having a drink on level 178. Without realizing it, my eyes started to get heavy and I completely forgot the consequences of not clearing my mind. From one moment to the next, I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I was no longer at home. Although I was not in the first level of the back rooms either, I was on level 178. At that moment, it was as if the alcohol had left my bloodstream. I was completely sober, aware of where I had gotten to. I remember being happy, but also very confused. It was impossible to have gone straight to level 178. All the rules say when you fall asleep, you start on level 1 of the back room. That level full of yellow offices and the smell of wet carpets. I started to explore the place, and yes, it was level 178, just as it was always described. The place smelled of bamboo sticks, and it was really hypnotic. You could feel the peace in every step I took through the infinite Japanese house. Excited, I started to explore the whole place. I wanted to live the full experience of level 178 before I could wake up. Once I finished with the house, I headed to one of the most striking areas of the level, the hot springs. You don't know how good it felt with them. It was as if I wasn't in a dream, as if I could enjoy them to the fullest. I relaxed in the middle of the water and closed my eyes again, hoping to stay a long time before I woke up. I didn't know what kind of blessing took me directly to level 178, but I was grateful. Unfortunately, that same blessing would soon turn into a nightmare. As I opened my eyes to take in the beautiful view of the hot springs, I looked down and noticed something a few feet away peering out of the water. It was eyes. A head was slowly coming out of the water, and eyes were peering out of it, staring at me as they slowly approached me, like a crocodile cornering its prey. I wanted to get out of the water, but I couldn't. This strange being was in the way, forcing me deeper and deeper into the hot springs to get away from whatever was chasing me. How was this possible? Level 178 was supposed to be calm. No entity is ever recorded to reach that level. I was supposed to be alone. In desperation, I kept swimming and swimming until suddenly, everything changed. I was back in the Japanese house, but something had changed. Everything was upside down. I knew where I was. This was level 178.1, which was the same as the previous one, but in reverse. I started to walk looking for the exit. I didn't want to be there anymore. I was terrified. The peaceful atmosphere became a horrifying and suffocating place. All the nice Japanese furniture started to make me claustrophobic. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. It was that being again. For the first time, I saw him standing behind me with his whole body. It was a kind of shadow, almost 2 meters. Horrible hands were coming out of his whole body, and his head had a kind of mask with a big smile on it. I was very scared. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was following me. It followed me from the hot springs, and now it was here, ready to corner me. I began to run quickly as the hideous monster moved towards me, absorbing everything in its path. Furniture, chairs, everything moved towards its body as if absorbed. No matter the size, no matter the height, everything was devoured by this horrendous being. Suddenly, I noticed that it was getting harder and harder to escape. The being was going faster and faster towards me. No, it was going at the same speed. It was me who was going slower. I noticed that my feet began to fail me, when a strange wind without strength seemed to suck me slowly toward the center of the monster. It was getting worse and worse. I felt weaker and weaker, and my feet became unfamiliar parts of my body. In just a few seconds, my legs already seemed to be punishing me for trying to escape, as if they wanted to stop on their own and be absorbed by the horrendous monster. My whole body began to cramp violently, and the pain flowed at great speed through my every nerve. But I knew I couldn't stop. I had to run, and keep running, even if my body revealed itself and prevented me from doing so. Something inside me knew that if that being reached me, a fate far worse than death would await me. But anyway, no matter how hard I tried, everything had a limit, and I had reached mine. After a few minutes, my body had stopped responding, and although in my head I was still running, my body had stopped completely. I began to scream in desperation as the strange being slowly absorbed me and pulled me into his body. All his hands coming out of the darkness scratched me and grabbed my face to get me inside faster. In those few seconds, I felt despair, fear, horror, but more than anything, emptiness. I felt an absolute emptiness. Everything stopped making sense, and I was ready to cease to exist when suddenly, it was all over. When I opened my eyes, my sister and my parents were beside me in my bed, worried. My face was soaked, and my mom had an empty glass of water in her hands. My sister told me I was screaming my head off, and I woke up everyone in the house. No matter how hard they shook me, they couldn't wake me. My only reaction was to cry and hug them. I was awake. It was all over, but what I had experienced seconds before was not a dream. It was real. After that, I stopped thinking about the back rooms. My life took a 180-degree turn, and I decided I had to stop playing with the unknown. I'm not going to lie. Even though I never went back to the back rooms, there were repercussions. Since that day, I feel much weaker. I get sick a lot more often, and my body doesn't respond like it used to. It's as if being inside that being for a few seconds has changed me forever, making my body weak and sensitive. You know, I can't complain. After that night I lived in that Japanese house, whatever fate my physical body had suffered was better than what would have happened if my family had not woken me up.
I must admit that initially I was quite excited. I had gotten a job on the trains, which paid very well. I remember they were very eager to hire me, and I thought it was because they liked my profile. How deluded. They needed someone innocent enough not to know what was going on at Rockefort Station. My first few nights were monotonous. I checked the platforms, made sure the lights were working, and occasionally helped some clueless person who had missed the last train. The station was practically empty after midnight, except for the odd tramp seeking shelter from the cold or a couple of late-night commuters. I quickly got used to the place's almost absolute silence. However, something in the atmosphere of Rockefort was different. I couldn't explain what it was, but it felt old, older than it looked. The walls made strange noises, and the wind blew through the tunnels. My companions told me I would get used to it, and many laughed that I was being suggestible for nothing. They warned me never to walk alone in the place when it was too dark, and if I see or hear anything strange, just ignore it and leave. To be honest, I didn't understand what they meant, although, if you think about it, it was kind of obvious. They were trying to scare me. It made sense. Not only was I the new guy, but also the youngest. I really had no idea how wrong I was, and one night, I understood why. It was after midnight when a man entered the station. He was disheveled with a haggard face and a coat that looked like it had been pulled out of a fire. He walked straight toward me as he finished closing one of the access doors. "Do you work here?" "Yes, can I help you with anything?" He stared at me before speaking. "There's a boy trapped on the lower level. I don't know how he got there, but he's crying and I can't reach him. I don't know what to do. You have to help me." I froze. The lower level had been sealed off for years. The doors were padlocked and no one had access, not even the employees. "That's impossible. No one can get in there." "I'm not crazy. I don't remember why. I'm very confused, but seriously, the boy was there. You have to help him." The intensity in his eyes made me uncomfortable. I hesitated, but the thought of a missing child outweighed my logic. I told him to wait for me while I looked for the keys to the locked doors. As I found them, I thought it would be best to call someone else, but I didn't want to look like an idiot. I went downstairs with the man, still convinced it was all a misunderstanding. The stairs to the lower level were narrow and dirty. There was hardly any light, and the air felt heavy. The man guided me, insisting that the boy was nearby.
I know what you're thinking. Anyone would think it was a trap, that this man would do something to me. But I was there, watching his face. I can assure you that this man was terrified. There was no way he was lying. As we descended, I felt that everything was wrong. There was a musty smell and something else, something I couldn't identify, as if something dead had been there for a long time. When we reached the bottom, I realized we were in the part of the station I didn't recognize. The walls were covered with cracks and there were dark puddles on the floor that I didn't want to inspect too closely. This way. I advanced behind him, but he suddenly stopped. There he is, the boy. In the shadows, I saw a small figure. He was on his back, sitting on the floor. He wasn't moving. Hey, little boy, are you all right? There was no answer. I took a step closer to him, but something stopped me. I turned to speak to the man, but he was gone. Hello? No one. The place was empty, as if the man had left without a sound of footsteps. Suddenly, I heard a whisper behind me. Help me. I turned around quickly. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were people approaching from all directions, but they were not normal people. They were covered with horrible wounds, as if they had been crushed, burned, or worse. One of them had a mangled face with one eye hanging out of its socket. Another was dragging a leg that seemed almost detached from his body. Please, help me. My son, I can't find him. The woman had no face. It was as if someone had taken it off. She was talking to me as if nothing had happened. Everyone was doing it. They all asked me for help for different reasons, but I didn't know how to help any of them. I didn't even know how to help me. I was absolutely terrified. I backed away, but they were everywhere. Their voices mixed full of pleading and desperation. One of them grabbed my arm. I felt his skin cold and clammy, as if he were a rotting corpse. I pulled my arm hard and let go, but another one appeared at my side. Take me to the hospital. It hurts so much. The man's face was all bruised and his teeth were missing. It was as if someone had beaten him until he was toothless. I couldn't take my attention away from the man as new ones appeared. I was surrounded. I backed up until I stumbled and fell to the ground. Hands began to touch me, to pull me towards them. I could feel their bodies on top of me, the weight of their desperation crushing me. I wanted to scream, but they were all over me, calling for help. I was sure I was going to die. I felt their bodies sinking against mine as their voices became screams and wails. I closed my eyes and screamed with all the strength I had. I didn't know if anyone would hear me, but I couldn't do anything else. Then someone grabbed me by the arm and pulled me up with incredible force. I opened my eyes and saw Eric, one of my coworkers. Run! And without a second thought, I ran. Whatever those things were, they didn't seem to stop. I didn't dare look back. Eric led me back to the stairs. He didn't let go of my arm until we were on the top level. I dropped to the floor. I was physically and psychologically destroyed. He looked at me. His face was pale and it was hard to breathe because he was running so much. I don't know. I didn't see anyone with you, but I know what you saw. You don't have to explain it. We all know. What do you mean? Look, I disagree with this. They should have checked you out before they hired you, but clearly they didn't. What are you talking about? This has happened before? Several times. You're not from around here, are you? This place is famous, but what people don't know is that at night, it's worse. During the day, there are noises and voices, but at night, these people start walking around the place. These people, they died here. They don't know it or they don't want to accept it, and they are looking for help. I looked at him incredulously. What about the man who took me there? The boy? Eric shook his head. None of it was real. Not now, at least. You were lucky, kid. Once you get in, you don't get out. If I hadn't gotten there, you'd be one of them too. I didn't know what to say. I could only nod as fear gripped me. Eric put a hand on my shoulder. Don't go back there. Don't listen to them. If someone asks you for help in the night, ignore them. Eventually, they'll go away.
And that was the first time I witnessed what was going on at Rockefort Station. I didn't quit the job. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed the money. Maybe because I wanted to prove to myself that I could get through it. But I never went back down to the lower level alone. Never. Every night I would walk around the station with my headphones on, ignoring any strange sounds. When someone tried to talk to me, I just kept walking. I never spoke to Eric or anyone else about it again. I just kept doing my job, and nothing else. This story is based on the numerous paranormal accounts surrounding Rockefort Station in Barcelona. Built in the early 20th century, the station has been the site of countless eerie events that have left witnesses shaken and confused. Passengers have reported feeling unseen presences, hearing whispers in the silence, and even spotting shadowy figures crossing the tracks at night, only to vanish without a trace. Some believe these phenomena are linked to tragic accidents that occurred at the station over the years, while others suspect they are manifestations of restless spirits. There's another chilling legend tied to the station's dark reputation. It's said that during late hours, the faint cry of a child can be heard echoing through the tunnels, though no children are present. Maintenance workers have also described tools mysteriously moving on their own and sudden drops in temperature in specific areas of the station. While skeptics dismiss these stories as urban legends, the eerie atmosphere and strange occurrences at Rockefort continue to fuel its haunted legacy.
How many of you grew up watching horror movies? Ever since I was a kid, all I could do was watch these movies. I always watched movies like Dracula or Jason and Freddy slashers. But aside from those well-known figures, there was something that interested me more: ghosts. As a kid, I was obsessed with capturing ghosts. I would get into trouble and search for places where it was too dangerous for a child. As a teenager, I kept looking, but little by little, I began to lose faith in it. When I was older, I made a YouTube channel to look for ghosts, but to tell you the truth, it's all lies. I started looking for ghosts, but my videos were too boring because no matter where I went, I never found anything. I got to the point where I stopped believing in the paranormal completely, so I put together my own scares for YouTube videos. But one day, the least expected happened. I finally discovered that ghosts are real. Do you know what else I discovered that day? That you can't play with them. I would have preferred to continue not believing or seeing anything in my whole life, because what I saw that day taught me to be terrified of what awaits us after death. That day, I got a small glimpse of pure evil. It all started in an old movie theater that, to my surprise, was still in operation. The place was just a society of promotion where sometimes they showed movies to their members. My interest in this place arose when I found several videos on the internet where the chairs moved by themselves. The tables fell down and the doors slammed violently. Okay, clearly it was all staged, but I didn't care. The video got enough attention for me to go see what was going on. I talked to the people at the local community association where the movie theater was located, and the response of the people was quite surprising. I knew it was all a lie, but the employees and people I was able to interview were pretty convinced that it was all true. I thought maybe the hoax was just a few and everyone believed it was true. In truth, that's the best way to maintain a lie. Make as few people part of it as possible. The place was private, so I couldn't do much more than ask questions. What the locals didn't know was that I planned to go much further. After asking a few questions, I stayed hidden in the place while they closed it. When it got dark, when there was no one else in the place, I took up my video and photo camera and started to explore the place. I knew nothing was going to happen, so I brought some strings and wires to create the scares on my own. Without fear, I started to walk around the cinema area to see where I could put the wires to create fake scares. I approached the movie theater chair and set up the scares to move them by hand as I left. I also left some glass on top of a piece of furniture to break. Everything was perfectly set up, so I started the performance. I filmed myself walking around the place in the dark. I was prepared to cause the first scare. But instead, the scare came to me. A chair had moved by itself. I recognized that chair. That was the chair I had put the string on. But I had not manipulated it, nor had the string pulled my hand. I was confused. Maybe it was an accident. Anyway, I kept filming, since at least I had captured a totally natural and believable reaction. I paused the video and went to check the thread. It was intact. I was about to start filming again in another part of the theater. But before I started, I heard a noise that made my camera fall over. The door near me gave a terrible bang that sent a roar throughout the movie theater. In this place, there was no wind. Everything was closed, and it even felt suffocating. There was no way that bang could have been a coincidence, and I didn't believe the story that there were ghosts in that place. Someone was with me. Someone was probably guarding the place, and when they saw me, they wanted to continue their little joke and scare me too. Ghosts or not, that place was no longer safe. I couldn't film or do anything if there were people watching my every move. I headed for the exit when I realized something. I was forgetting my camera on the floor. I went back to the movie theater, and that's when I realized that none of this was an elaborate prank. There was no way that what was in front of me was fake. I started to make sure that what I was seeing was real. Sitting in the same chair that had moved by itself, sitting in that chair where I had put a thread, someone, or rather something, was sitting. That thing that was there was not human. It was the most horrifying and creepy being I had ever seen in my life. Its body had a humanoid shape, but was deformed and out of a nightmare. What frightened me the most were its eyes and mouth. Its mouth was full of terrifyingly long teeth, while its eyes, compressed backward, were huge and black and stared at me in a terrifying way, as if obsessed with me. I walked slowly backward, not knowing how I could react to what I was seeing. But the door closed again in front of me. When I looked forward again, the monster was gone, but all the chairs had turned around. They were all facing me. I looked on in disbelief. I remember telling myself that all this had to be a joke. None of it could be real. That paranormal thing didn't exist. Suddenly, the chairs began to move slowly in my direction. All the doors except the one behind me opened and closed violently. I fell to the ground in terror, and when I realized, the monster was in front of me. All he did was stare at me with a huge grin and his eyes completely dilated. I was unable to move. I didn't know if he was doing something to me or if it was just my fear, but I was completely frozen. Aware of this, the monster stuck his 2 fingers in my mouth and started to pull them apart with an enormous superhuman force. With each passing second, I could feel my mouth opening wider and wider. The tissues of my lip were being destroyed and my jaw was breaking. At the same time, he put his other hand on my eyes, where he pressed his fingers very slowly into my eyes, squeezing them tighter and tighter. At that point, I couldn't see anything, but I could feel liquid all over my face, and I could tell it was my blood. On the other side, I could feel a laugh, the laugh of the monster that didn't kill me because it didn't want to, because it seemed to enjoy every second of what I was doing. Ah! And suddenly, it's all over. When I woke up, I realized I was in an alley a few blocks away from the movie theater. When I looked at the time, it was 8 p.m. You know what was the strangest thing? The date was the same, just a few hours earlier. I approached the movie theater again, asking for answers, and the people in charge of the place told me that I had been asking questions, but that I had left an hour ago, as if nothing had happened, as if I had never hidden or spent the night there. But you know, it was all real. Since that day, my jaw has hurt a lot and my eyes burn. There are times when I wake up and vomit dirt, and other times I see shadows where there is nothing. Do you know what the worst part of all this is? It's been 2 years now, and all this is still happening to me. I still don't understand why I am still alive. Maybe that thing didn't want to kill me in that place. Maybe it was a warning, or maybe it enjoyed more the fact that I was being consumed over time, slowly, like a decomposing corpse. Whatever it is, I will live whatever is left of my life without looking for the paranormal. Although I know that sooner or later, the paranormal will find me.
The events described in this story occurred at different times for different members of the same family. I met this family and convinced them to tell me their story. This strange incident happened with 4 members of this family. Hello, my name is Harrison, and I am conducting research on paranormal incidents. I want to become a paranormal investigator in the future, and I am currently preparing for that. I take notes on paranormal activity that occurs around me, and I discuss strange occurrences with people in the hopes that this will help me become a paranormal investigator in the future. So I met a family today who informed me about a paranormal event that happened to them recently, and I decided to start a record of these occurrences. Let's figure out what happened to them. Mr. Williams lives in this house with his wife and 2 children. Their older son, Colton, is 15 years old, and their younger son, Nicole, is 12 years old. Nicole, the house's youngest and brightest member, describes what happened to him as follows. We bought this house 6 years ago, and after a few months, strange things began to happen in this house. As a result, household items began to deteriorate. First, the TV was damaged, then the fridge, and finally, the air conditioner. As a result, other things in the house started to fail. Everyone was surprised to know why all of these things were happening in the house. Then I went to bed in my room one night. I dozed for a while. Right at that moment, I became aware of the sound of someone strolling in the upstairs room using loud, heavy footsteps. Thack, 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 thack. I was thinking that since no one goes upstairs, where is this sound coming from? I told everyone in my house about it the next morning, but no one paid attention. Hearing this, I began to believe that something similar had occurred, and I went back to sleep in my room that night. Around 2:30 a.m., I felt as if someone had climbed onto my bed. I opened my eyes and looked around, but no one was there. I then realized it was a dream and fell back asleep. A few days later, some of my relatives visited us for the holidays. They also had 2 children the same age as me. After dinner, all of the kids came to my room and began scaring each other by telling ghost witch stories. One of them, Archie, declared that he was not